C1419 Invincible Heaven. Chapter 1419 Invincible Heaven. 1419 Invincible Heaven. As Yuan recalled his time as the city lord of the city of Xian, he opened the doors to the Invincible Heaven and entered it. The first floor served as the lobby, where his citizens would frequently line up to discuss their grievances with the city, among other matters. During his time as the city lord, Tian would seek advice from the citizens to improve the city's lifestyle. My name is. I am here today because I have an issue with my neighbor. I have a business at. I am here to see if I can delay my taxes this month due to. The citizens visited Tian for all sorts of reasons, even minor issues that weren't related to the city at all. Normally, such requests would only be deemed a waste of time and immediately turned away, but Tian listened to everyone, regardless of how insignificant it may seem. Because of this, he was trusted by all of the citizens, as well as being highly respected by them. And it was to the point where some would claim that the citizens trusted their city lord more than their own family. The second and third floors served as waiting areas for these citizens. From the fourth floor and upward, Tian utilized the space as training rooms and living quarters for his soldiers. The Invincible Heaven was crafted using precious materials capable of withstanding blows from even immortal cultivators, and each floor could easily accommodate several people. Despite its towering height, Tian considered it an unnecessary extravagance, a waste of resources. However, the builders were resolute in creating a structure befitting his status, resulting in the magnificent pagoda that could accommodate thousands despite being intended for a single occupant. Good morning, City Lord. City Lord, do you have a minute to spare? I would like to test out a new technique that I've recently created on you. Everyone in the city of Xian held deep love and respect for Tian. He had transformed a humble backwater village, devoid of any significant resources, into a formidable and wealthy city boasting its own military might, surpassing even many major cities in the region. Tian himself was a formidable warrior, renowned far and wide as an undefeated prodigy capable of beating opponents an entire realm above his own cultivation. Also known as the God of War, his mere presence instilled a sense of security among the citizens, granting them peaceful slumber devoid of worry, akin to that of newborn infants. At the pinnacle of the Invincible Heaven rested Tian's work chamber, affording him a vantage point from which he could survey the entirety of the city below while seated on this majestic seat, his presence resembling that of a god. Upon reaching the summit of the pagoda, Yuan removed the thick layer of dust on an object that had settled over millions of years, revealing the gleaming surface of the golden throne beneath, before taking his seat upon it. As he sat on the throne, even more memories flowed into his mind. City Lord, the Celestial Emperor's messenger is here to request your aid once again. A soldier approached him with a troubled expression, relaying the news. No matter how many times he sends his messengers, my answer will always be the same. I have no interest in aiding him in a war that was created by his own ego and obsession. I will not send my soldiers to their death for someone like him. I will let the messenger know. The soldier said before leaving. Naturally, the soldier refrained from conveying Tian's response word for word to the messenger, recognizing that it could be interpreted as a declaration of war by the Celestial Emperor. During Tian's era, the Celestial Emperor wielded unchecked power, intoxicated by his own authority. He would hog all of the resources for himself and eliminate any perceived threat, regardless of the consequences for the world at large. However respectfully the city of Xian may decline to support the Celestial Emperor in his war, it would eventually be perceived as defiance, even opposition. In the eyes of the Celestial Emperor, refusal to ally could only be interpreted as enmity. As expected, after 3 refusals, the Celestial Emperor ceased sending messengers, and instead dispatched soldiers of war to the city of Xian to pressure Tian. Unfortunately for the Celestial Emperor, Tian wasn't some pushover and immediately got rid of these soldiers who dared to threaten his city. Yet, despite Tian's resistance, the Celestial Emperor persisted, sending increasingly larger forces with each encounter, determined to assert his dominance over the city of Xian. This back and forth continued for a few years, until the Celestial Emperor had enough and adjusted his plan slightly. However, This sudden change in tactics resulted in an incident that marked the end of a concluding war, and the start of an even bigger war that lasted for thousands of years, as well as the birth of a fearsome entity known as the Evil God. After taking another moment to look around, he stood up and said, "There's a nearby place that I would like to visit. Let's make a slight detour." After departing from the Invincible Heaven, Yuan proceeded on foot towards a particular building situated several minutes away. Yuan wiped away the dust covering the metal tag next to the gate, revealing the surname Tian flawlessly engraved on it. Indeed, had returned to his old home, where he lived a humble life with his beloved wife. Upon entering the building, he immediately walked to a specific room on the second floor. When he saw the interior, he recalled what the stairway to heaven showed him during his previous trial. Xiu. Yuan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists upon entering the blood-stained room, where the walls and ceiling were tainted with brown, dried-up blood from countless years ago, suggesting that someone had met a grisly fate within those confines. Sensing a significant surge of bloodlust from him, Xiaohua nervously inquired, "Are you all right, brother Yuan?" Hearing her voice, Yuan took a deep breath and nodded weakly, "Yes." C1420 Basement. Chapter 1420 Basement 1420 Basement. After spending a moment staring at the gruesome scene before him, Yuan released a deep sigh before turning around and walking out of the room. He walked back downstairs until he reached the basement. A thick cloud of dust smacked into Yuan's face when he opened the basement door, but he reacted quickly enough to block it. Upon walking down the staircase that creaked with every step, Yuan arrived at a small room that had visited before during a trial within the stairway to heaven. The room seemed empty at first glance besides the obvious dust covering every inch of the place, but Yuan approached one of the walls in a manner that suggested something was there. He closed his eyes and stood there in silence. A few moments later he muttered a few inaudible words. A profound ripple swept the room in response, revealing a red portal standing right in front of Yuan. After seeing this portal, Yuan walked into it without any hesitation. Another world existed on the other side of the portal. It was a pitch-black world without any light, so dark that Yuan wouldn't be able to see his own hand even if he waved it in his face. Divine sense was also useless in this abyss, or rather, unavailable, as Yuan's cultivation base was sealed the moment he entered, almost as though the darkness had consumed it all. He didn't even bother trying to summon his alchemy flames to light up the place, because he knew that it would be a futile effort. Despite having zero visibility and his cultivation base sealed, Yuan calmly walked forward with precise and calm strides, occasionally turning at a specific angle. Xiaohua was quite curious about their location, but she didn't want to disturb Yuan, who was immersed in his memories, following a path that led him to his destination. After 15 minutes of constant movement, Yuan's view turned from absolute darkness to a fully lit room that was the exact size as his basement room. However, the room was immaculate and without a speck of dust. Moreover, there were 3 items displayed at the end of the room. Yuan approached the 3 items with a sense of nostalgia washing over him. There was an old silver spear, a damaged black chest armor, and a pair of worn-out black boots. These 3 items were worn by Tian back when he was still known as the God of War, experiencing more battles than even the most veteran soldiers nowadays. Despite their worn-out appearances, they still exuded a profound aura that surpasses even divine-grade treasures. Silver victory, grade, mythic, quality, peak, physical strength requirement, 27 million. Description: an ancient relic once wielded by the God of War, who fought and won over 1 million battles. Despite its tattered appearance, it remains in great condition. Increases damage by 10,000%. Increases weapon penetration by 20,000%. Increases damage by an additional 10,000% when fighting another soldier. Stygian vest. Grade, mythic, quality, peak, physical strength requirement, 20 million. Physical defense requirement, 35 million. Description: the God of War never entered battle without this piece of armor, saving his life countless times. Increases physical defense by 1,000%. When worn, it will reflect all damages from those below Divine Lord. God of War's protection will automatically activate when it senses imminent danger that threatens the wearer's life, negating any damage a single time from those below Divine Emperor, 72-hour cooldown. Stygian Boots, Grade, Mythic, Quality, Peak, Physical Strength Requirement, 12 million Physical Defense Requirement, 19 million Description. God of War's favorite shoes, its sole dyed crimson from always being submerged in his enemy's blood. Increases movement speed by 100% when worn. Immune to most movement restrictions when worn. Increases movement speed by an additional 50% when in a battlefield environment. Yuan stored two of these three treasures in his spatial ring, wearing the Stygian boots immediately. Although he already has a spear, Silver Victory's prowess vastly surpassed the Dragon's Soul in its current form in terms of raw power. The only advantage Dragon's Soul had over Silver Victory would be its unique effect that ignores spiritual energy. Unless he encountered an enemy he could not harm normally, such as by Xiutao, Silver Victory would serve him better. As for the armor, he finally had something to replace the invisible dragon's cloak, which had served him long enough. Moreover, his naked body alone, strengthened by the golden immortal physique, could endure attacks from divine warriors, making the invisible dragon's cloak even more obsolete. However, the Stygian boosts are arguably the best of the three treasures for Yuan, as treasures that increase one's movement speed are exceedingly rare and sought after. Furthermore, it also protected him from many movement restrictions, such as formations that could slow down one's movement. In a fight between two equally skilled and powerful fighters, the one with the superior speed usually comes out as the victor. Hence why anything that could boost one's movement speed is worth a fortune. That elaborate room before this one was only meant to hide these three treasures? Xiaohua couldn't help but ask. Yuan nodded. This room was meant to be a safe shelter for my wife, but it ended up becoming a storage. Huh? Brother Yuan's wife? Xiaohua muttered in a dazed voice. My previous life. I had a wife and a child. Unfortunately, I was unable to protect them. They were assassinated while I was busy with the enemy. Yuan sighed, not hiding one of his darkest moments in history. Yuan closed his eyes, recalling the events that led up to that tragic incident. Xian lived a rough childhood from the moment of his birth. He was abandoned shortly after birth and left in the wilderness as food for the wild beasts. If a passing mountain bandit hadn't found him and decided to raise him, that would have been the end of everything. Yet against all odds, Xian managed to survive. C1421 Xian. Chapter 1421 Xian 1421 Xian 1. Might expect Xian's life to get better after being adopted by a mountain bandit, but he was treated as a servant until he was able to prove to the others that he had what it took to become a fellow bandit. If you want to be acknowledged as a fellow bandit, you'll need to plunder at least 10 gold coins by yourself. If you cannot do even that, you might as well be a slave for the rest of your life. After years of self-training without any instructors, Xian finally earned the others' respect by looting 100 gold coins from a merchant after killing 3 mortal guards all by himself. He was only 10 years old at that time. Haha. From now on, you'll be our 17th brother. 100 gold coins. That's a record. By a whopping 24 gold coins. Upon becoming a full-fledged bandit for 2 short years, misfortune befell Xian once again when their gang of bandits were caught and executed by a group of soldiers. At that time, half of the bandits including Xian were mere mortals without any cultivation. The other half were hovering in the mid-level of spirit apprentice. Kill these low-life bandits. Kill them all. No mercy. Unsurprisingly, when a group of spirit warriors appeared to hunt them, none of the bandits survived. All of them were slain mercilessly, except for one. When the soldiers saw how young yet skillful he wielded his weapon and learned his history with the bandits, they offered him a new life as a soldier for the Xiu family, a powerful and influential royal family in the 4th heaven. Kid, you don't have to die here. Come with us and start a new life as a soldier for the Xiu family. You'll be fed properly, given a real bed, paid a salary, and even have a worthwhile purpose in life. If you refuse, you'll die here with the very bandits that took advantage of you. Xian had no reason to refuse such a generous offer, so he accepted it, following these soldiers back to the Xiu family, where he was given proper education and training. His life as a soldier wasn't easy and extremely strict, completely different from that of a mountain bandit, but Xian adapted to his new lifestyle very quickly. His attitude and morals quickly changed, shocking even those who brought him back. Are you really the same mountain bandit from a week ago? Fuck. How can a person change so fast? You're not actually a spy, are you? Eventually, the soldiers realized that Xian was blessed with a great gift, the ability to master any weapon with ease. Why is he training with the sword today when he was training with the spear just yesterday? I saw him training with the saber too. I guess he's having trouble picking a weapon. If you're a man, you've gotta pick the spear. Are you insane? Swords dominate the martial world for a reason. It didn't take long for the Xiu family to take notice of Xian's immense talent with weapons. No matter what kind of weapon they tossed his way, Xian would perfect it within a day, two at most, despite having never touched them before. I have never witnessed such talents before. And he's not even an adult. We need to nurture him properly. He'll be of great asset to our Xiu family in the future. In just a single year, Xian went from an ordinary soldier still in training to being a royal guard for the Xiu family. After becoming a royal guard, Xian was taught how to cultivate, and was even allowed to use the Xiu family's cultivation technique. Something heavily protested at first but eventually stopped after the Xiu family's treasured jewel, Xiu Mei, insisted on letting him learn the technique. Princess Xiu, we need to speak about your obsession with that young soldier. It is too much for someone of your stature. Please think of how it'll affect your image. There are already rumors spreading about the two of you. Screw my image. He's the only one around my age here, and someone I can call a real friend. If you don't like it, you can simply ignore it. As for the rumors, are they calling us a couple yet? What if they think we've kissed already? Do you think he's heard of them too? I'm so embarrassed. It was no secret that the princess of the Xiu family would often visit the soldiers' barracks to play with Xian, who was only a year older than her. Furthermore, she fancied Xian's appearance and admired his diligent nature. Nobody would be shocked if they were told that Xiu Mei had some sort of romantic feelings for him. In fact, it was so obvious that even a blind man would be able to see it. However, because of the difference in their status, Xian would often be a target of bullying, mostly by young masters from powerful and wealthy families who envied his relationship with Xiu Mei. It was inevitable even though he was a royal guard, because in the end he was just a mere soldier. Xian, you're all bruised again. Why don't you fight back? You can easily handle those losers with your skills and strength. Xiu Mei would often reprimand him for not defending himself. Xian responded with a subtle smile. I can only point my weapon at the Xiu family's enemies. Unless they become your enemy, I am unable to harm them. Otherwise, your family will also be affected, as I am, at the end of the day, your soldier. Moreover, beating the helpless and weak is only something a bully and bandit would do. I am past that kind of life. Xian. Xiu Mei looked at him with a tender gaze. He continued. Also, if your royal highness cannot convince them to stop, what can I, a mere foot soldier, do? Xiu Mei's body trembled upon hearing his words that had a double meaning. She immediately turned around and stomped away in anger. The following day, an incident that sent the entire fourth heaven into an uproar occurred. Princess Xiu Mei, who was known far and wide for her docile and gentle nature, had gone on a rampage and brutally assaulted several famous troublemakers at a popular restaurant, sending them to the hospital with a broken nose and half of their teeth missing. C1422 Princess Xiu. Chapter 1422 Princess Xiu. 1422 Princess Xiu. The day after Xian got bullied and spoke with her, Xiu Mei sneaked out of the royal palace and made her way to a famous restaurant in the same city, where the bullies that mess with Xian are rumored to frequent. Why, your royal highness? What in heaven's name are you doing here by yourself? Where are your guards? The receptionist was scared out of her mind when Xiu Mei walked into the restaurant alone. Xiu Mei casually dismissively waved her hand and spoke. Forget about that. I need to know something. Is the Li family's young master and his group of troublemakers here right now? Young Master Li and his friends? Yes, they have been dining on the top floor for the past half hour. If your Royal Highness is looking for them, I will call them down here for you. No, that won't be necessary. I'll go greet them myself since they aren't expecting me. Without saying anything else, Xiaomei walked upstairs with the receptionist staring at her back with a nervous gaze. I should notify the Xiu family. The receptionist had an ominous feeling when he saw Xiaomei and didn't want to be responsible if anything were to happen to her. While the receptionist alerted the Xiu family of Xiaomei's presence at the restaurant, the person herself casually climbed to the top floor of the restaurant. At the end of the hall, 2 guards were standing before a closed room that couldn't contain the loud laughter inside. Haha, did you see how that wimp stood there and ate our fists? I have never seen such a coward before. How did a loser like that become a royal guard for the Xiu family? Whoever made that decision must have been blind. Fuck. Just thinking about him makes me want to beat him up some more. We can always give him another visit. Hell, we can even see him after this. Why don't we cut off his fingers so that he'll lose qualifications to even work as a soldier? I bet he won't even fight back. Once Princess Xiu realizes how much of a cowardly bastard that soldier is, she'll definitely stop paying attention to him. As Xiaomei overheard their conversation, her expression immediately darkened, and her steps toward the room hastened. Stop right there, Anaiden. Your Royal Highness? What are you doing here? The guard standing watch tried to stop her from approaching the room, but instantly gave up when they took a closer look at her beautiful yet terrifying face. Bang! Without saying a word to the guards, Xiaomei kicked down the doors like a barbarian, startling everyone in the room. Which bastard dares? Fuck! How dare you startle this young master? I'll have your entire family executed. The young masters in the room stopped their speech halfway when they saw Xiaomei standing before the broken door with clenched fists, their faces filled with disbelief and shock, looking like they had just seen a ghost. Princess Xiu. What are you doing here? However, these young masters couldn't care less why Xiaomei was there. They only wanted to know if she had overheard their loud conversation just now. Of course, they had an idea judging by the way she kicked down the doors and her chilling aura. Xiaomei was the first to break the silence, speaking in a cold tone. Damaging my future husband's face is already punishable by death, but to think you would even consider doing something as heinous as robbing him of his future, I'll have you bastards executed immediately. Without any warning, Xiaomei exuded immense killing intent as she jumped to the nearest young master, punching him directly in the face, and sending him flying. Despite her small and seemingly delicate figure, Xiaomei possessed the cultivation of a peak spirit grandmaster. The one who received her punch felt his face dent inward before his vision darkened. Princess Xiu. Please calm down. We were only joking. The young masters showed zero signs of wanting to fight back. In fact, they were all older than Xiaomei by several years, but their cultivation was only between peak spirit master and mid-level spirit grandmaster. None of them were strong enough to defeat her even if they fought without caring about her status. Ah. My fingers are bending backward. One of the young masters screamed in pain after trying to block Xiaomei's fist. Another was struck directly in the mouth, shattering most of his teeth. Ah. My leg. Xiaomei, who was also known as the Gentle Princess, was no different than a barbarian at this moment, her small and smooth hands stained and dripping with fresh blood. In just a few minutes, Xiaomei had brutally crushed 5 young masters without breaking a sweat. If the guards hadn't stopped her at the very end, she wouldn't have hesitated to act upon her words and executed them on that day. What transpired at the restaurant was spread throughout the continent like wildfire, shocking every individual who heard it. The Xiu family expected Xiaomei's image and reputation to plummet like a boulder. However, to their surprise, her actions had actually significantly improved her reputation, especially among the citizens within their own city. The troublemakers she had dealt with had caused so much trouble for the people that everybody dreamed of giving them a taste of their own medicine, but couldn't, due to obvious reasons. Long live Princess Xiu for dealing with those troublemakers. Ah! This news is worth a grand celebration. If only they were killed. That would have been even better. However, while the citizens celebrated, The families of these troublemakers immediately sought reparation from the Xiu family, and their friendly relationship that was slowly built over thousands of years vanished in a single day. These families were not small backgrounds, and could threaten even the Xiu family if they worked together, so it brought no small headache to the Xiu family. The Xiu family immediately tried to repair their relationship, but these families never intended to do so, and had always coveted the Xiu family's power. Now that they had the opportunity and the excuse, they established another faction together in hopes of replacing the Xiu family. C1423 Unprecedented Genius. Chapter 1423 Unprecedented Genius. 1423 Unprecedented Genius. Xiaomei, because of your reckless actions, we've lost several powerful allies. Even worse, they have formed an alliance that will now directly challenge us. At this rate, there will be war, and our victory isn't guaranteed. Emperor Xiu sighed in front of his beloved daughter. He would have never imagined that his most precious and gentle daughter would cause such trouble, and it was all for a single soldier. Can we even call them allies when they have clearly planned on opposing us for some time now? If I hadn't acted and exposed their true faces, we wouldn't have known about it until we had a sword stabbed in our back. Xiaomei rebuked. The room fell silent after Xiaomei's words. Your Majesty, I have to agree with the princess on this matter. Her actions and reasoning aside, it showed us the true colors of those traitorous bastards. The Li family and the others would have eventually stabbed us in the back if given the chance, regardless if Princess Xiu had beaten their children or not. We should immediately start preparing to deal with them. One of the most trusted and experienced royal advisors there said. Not just that. Those families are rumored to have some shady business running in the shadows. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to secure any solid evidence that could incriminate them yet, said one of their generals. I am actually glad that the princess had done what she did. Those children are infamous troublemakers. We've received a mountain of complaints from the citizens because of them. Moreover, it exposed their true colors to us, allowing us to take action faster. The majority of people in the room expressed their support for Xiaomei. Seeing this, Emperor Xiu could no longer find it in him to punish her and sighed. You got lucky this time, Xiaomei. I won't punish you as the emperor, but as your father, I have to ensure you won't do something so reckless again. That young soldier who made you do this. I forbid you from seeing him again. What? But father? Xiaomei immediately tried to protest, but she was quickly rejected. If you agree to never see him again, I will allow him to continue working as a soldier for us. However, if you refuse, I will have him removed immediately. The choice is yours. Xiaomei clenched her teeth in frustration. Despite her ability to defeat those young masters, she remained powerless against her father's authority. Emperor Xiu could have Xian executed for encouraging Xiaomei's actions, leaving her with no recourse but to lament her situation. I understand. I will not see him again, but you have to keep your promise and not touch him. If you break this promise, I will hate you forever, Xiaomei said before turning around and stomping out of the room in anger. Since that day, Xiaomei kept her promise and did not approach Tian once. However, she would occasionally sneak a peek at him from afar to ensure that he was still there, and Emperor Xiu did not break his promise. Xian knew that Xiaomei's disappearance was most likely related to what she did for him, and refrained from even mentioning her name, as he was worried about stirring the hornet's nest. Of course, he would notice someone staring at him from afar from time to time, but he pretended to be oblivious to it for obvious reasons. Thank you, Your Royal Highness, for protecting me. I, Tian, swear to protect you until my last breath. After making that vow to himself, Tian intensified his training regimen, pushing himself to the brink of exhaustion each day until he collapsed from sheer fatigue. 2.5 years passed in the blink of an eye. It has been 4 years since Tian became a soldier for the Xiu family. He recently turned 16, officially becoming an adult. He also reached the realm of Spirit King with unprecedented speed, shocking the entire army. Moreover, he mastered every weapon known to man, becoming a powerful force that could fight those several levels above his own cultivation. The reputation of the prodigious talent Tian had reached every corner of the Xiu family. earning admiration even from the emperor himself. I knew he was talented even before he started his cultivation. But to think I almost threw away such a monster. I'm so glad that I didn't quietly get rid of him that day. Emperor Xiu sighed out loud before the presence of several individuals. Xian. He started training for the Royal Guard a year after he joined us and graduated a year later, becoming the youngest Royal Guard in our army's history at the age of 14, said the general of the army, who also held Xian in high regard. He continued, he's just turned 16 and he can already fight me toe-to-toe despite having a lower cultivation base. I have never seen a monster like him before. We should properly secure him within the Xiu family before it's too late. Our situation with the Seven Heavenly Order has only been worsening for the past 3 years. We'll need his strength when war eventually breaks out in the near future, suggested the royal advisor. Indeed, agreed the emperor, his expression grave. Xian's talent is our greatest hope against the impending storm. We must ensure his loyalty and commitment to our cause. However, how should we go about this? The easiest and most common method would be to give him one of our daughters. I have 3 daughters, but they are all married, said the general in a regretful tone. I have 2 daughters. One was recently married, and the other is only 10 years old. The royal advisor sighed. I only have sons, said another royal advisor. I have a daughter who is 17 years old and not married, but she already fancies some disciple from the Grand Sword Academy, said the royal treasurer. You should introduce your daughter to Xian, royal treasurer. I'm sure she'll like him better than that disciple, Emperor Xiu suggested. However, the royal treasurer shook his head and sighed. It's not that simple. She may not be married, but she's already given her body to that disciple. And they plan on getting married once that disciple becomes a core disciple. Aya, you should have said that first. Emperor Xiu sighed. Anyways, does anyone here have a daughter who isn't married and who is still pure? Xian is an unprecedented genius who probably won't appear again in our lifetime. The royal advisor there suddenly raised his hand and spoke. Your Majesty, what about Princess Xiu? If I recall correctly, she was pretty close with Xian before that incident with the families from the Seven Heavenly Order. Xiu. Impossible. I will let him have anyone but her. He immediately refuted. But Your Majesty, we don't have anyone else. Furthermore, it will pretty much guarantee that Xian will stay loyal to the Xiu family if his wife is Xiu, who is of direct lineage. Omicron very quickly, the others started voicing their approval of Xiu and Xian's marriage despite being responsible for their separation several years ago. C1424 Engagement. Chapter 1424 Engagement 1424 Engagement. Your Majesty, since this conversation is related to Princess Xiu's future, we should have the person in question here with us. I'd like to hear her opinion on this matter, as well, the royal treasurer said. No. I don't care what you guys say. You will not convince me to sell my beloved daughter, Emperor Xiu exclaimed, remaining adamant. But nobody is telling Your Majesty to sell Princess Xiu. If the princess fancies Xian, everything is fine. Or does Your Majesty plan on keeping Princess Xiu single for the rest of her life? One of the generals asked. Emperor Xiu clenched his teeth in frustration, but he was unable to answer the general's question. Naturally, he couldn't let Xiu remain alone forever, but he also couldn't imagine anyone being worthy of her. After spending several hours convincing the emperor, they summoned Xiu's presence into the room and explained the situation to her. So in order to ensure that Xian's loyalty remains with the Xiu family, we have decided to find him a partner. I will marry him. Xiu gave her response before they could even finish explaining the situation. Let us finish. No. I will be the one to marry him. That's why you called me here, right? My answer is yes. Xiu spoke without hesitation, her eyes flickering with excitement. Xiu's enthusiasm left the emperor utterly speechless, even devastated. However, he was unable to find the strength to talk her out of it. Why him? Emperor Xiu eventually found the courage to ask her this simple question. What? I don't know when I started looking at him with interest, but I have been watching him grow ever since he was brought back by the other soldiers. He's a very earnest and hard-working individual, but his real charms only appear when you really get to know him. Xiaomei closed her eyes and recalled the first time she coincidentally laid eyes on Xian, who was training alone even before the morning sun rose. Xian's young presence piqued her interest, so she asked around and learned of his background as an abandoned child who was adopted by mountain bandits. Since then, she occasionally checked in on Xian's progress, and before she knew it, they were chatting and laughing together like best friends. Honestly, I think it was love at first sight. I already decided to make him my husband years ago, so I won't allow another woman to have him. Xiaomei glared at her father with a serious expression. Seeing this, Emperor Xiu worried that Mei Xiu might do something drastic like last time if he meddled with her love affairs. If you're this stubborn about it, I will have no choice but to allow it. In the end, Emperor Xiu waved the white flag and approved of their relationship. Thank you, father. Xiaomei immediately stormed out of the room and went to look for Tian. Since Tian could always be seen training in the same area, Xiaomei had no trouble and found him instantly. Tian, she called out to him. Tian was startled by her sudden voice and dropped the weapon he was training with, and turned around to see Mei Xiu standing right behind him with a bashful smile on her face. Why, Your Royal Highness? Why are you here? He asked her, looking truly puzzled by her presence. After all, they haven't seen each other in almost 3 years. Mei Xiu raised her hands with 2 fingers pressed together into a cross and said, Booby you! I told you to stop addressing me so coldly. Call me Xiaomei. Tian was utterly speechless. In the 3 years that he hadn't seen her, Xiaomei had grown into a devastating beauty that could collapse even cities with her smile alone. Yet her character remained almost the same as 3 years ago. Xiaomei, you need to leave before someone sees you here with me. I don't want to get you in trouble again. Tian picked up his weapon and returned to training, acting like he never even noticed her. However, Xiaomei pounced on his body and embraced him from behind. Xiaomei, what are you doing? He cried out loud, feeling 2 soft objects pressing against his sweaty back. You don't need to worry about that anymore. I have received my father's permission to see you again. Let's go somewhere to catch up. We haven't spoken to each other in almost 3 years after all. Before Tian could even respond, Xiaomei had already dragged him away from his training spot. Tian could only wear a bittersweet smile on his face as he allowed her to drag him off without any resistance. Xiaomei took Tian to an old spot where they used to meet frequently. They spent several hours catching up on their lives, with Xiaomei doing most of the talking, as Tian's days were primarily consumed by training. However, Xiaomei did not bring up their marriage the entire time from the beginning to end. In her mind, even without Emperor Xiu's approval, they would have ended up together, as if it was her fate to be with him. Over the next 2 years, Xiaomei spent nearly every day by Tian's side. Whether she was quietly observing him train from a distance or sharing laughter with him, every moment they spent together held equal significance in her heart. In 2 years, their relationship underwent a significant transformation, culminating in an engagement. However, it was Xiaomei who took the bold step of proposing to Tian. Tian refused at first due to the difference in their status and Xiaomei's exalted background, but Xiaomei reassured him that they would have the emperor's blessing. Sure enough, Emperor Xiu personally approached Tian that very day to congratulate him on their engagement. I will leave my daughter in your hands, Tian. If you dare make her cry or fail to protect her, I will come after you even after death. I swear that I will protect her with my life, Your Majesty. Who are you calling Your Majesty? I am your father-in-law now. Call me father. Why, yes, father. C1425 Tian's First Battle. Chapter 1425 Tian's First Battle. 1425 Tian's First Battle. While Tian and Xiaomei became engaged, their relationship wasn't officially announced or acknowledged yet. The reasoning was simple. They decided to wait until Tian had gained sufficient fame and reputation before making their engagement public. If the Xiu family were to announce the engagement of their prize jewel to a common soldier during a time of war with the Seven Heavenly Order, they risked ridicule and mockery. While Xian had gained fame as a prodigy within the Xiu family, this knowledge was kept internal, and few outside their circle were aware of his talents. Xian, our situation with the Seven Heavenly Order has finally reached the point of war. I will send you into battle so you can acquire experience and make a name for yourself. Do you object? Emperor Xiu asked him. I object. Why do you have to send him when there are countless other soldiers? It's too dangerous. Xiu Mei refused to send her beloved to war, fearing the possibility of him getting hurt or, even worse, losing his life. However, Xian placed his hand on her shoulder and said, Please Xiu Mei, don't be like this. This is what I've been trained for. If I can't fulfill the purpose I've dedicated many years to, then what meaning does my existence hold? Well said. The general exclaimed with an excited smile on his face. Xian turned to look at Emperor Xiu and continued with a resolute face. I accept, Your Majesty. No, please, let me go to war with the Seven Heavenly Order. I have a debt to repay them, after all. Emperor Xiu nodded with a calm smile. Very well. Then you will be part of our first battle with them. Immediately prepare for departure. As you command, Your Majesty. Once they returned to their room, Xiu Mei asked, Is there really no way I can convince you to stay here with me? Xian, noticing that she was crying, walked over and wiped her tears. Xiu Mei, the Seven Heavenly Order threatens the Xiu family and your safety. As your soldier and future husband, it's only natural for me to fight them to defend our family. If the emperor had heard such words, he would definitely be jumping in joy over how successful their plan was. I couldn't raise my hand at those bullies back then because they were allies, but now that they are our enemy, I won't hesitate to get rid of them like you wanted me to. Xian. Xiu Mei suddenly propelled herself forward and gave him a passionate kiss on the lips. I want to give you something before you leave for the war. She started removing her clothes, her face flushed with redness. Once she was fully naked, she grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the bed. Xian's eyes widened at her actions. However, he didn't reject it and followed her to the bed, where they passionately embraced each other and connected for the first time. They made love to each other for several days straight, until it was time for Xian to leave. On the battlefield several thousand miles away from the Xiu family, Xian stood in a formation as they faced the Seven Heavenly Order's army, which was 3 times larger in size. Heavens! Those Seven Heavenly Order bastards have violated the agreed-upon number of soldiers to be sent into battle on our very first engagement. This bodes ill for us. The soldiers were both shocked and incensed by the Seven Heavenly Order's blatant disregard for honor. In order to prevent a full-fledged war between two massive powers, they often resort to small-scale skirmishes with a predetermined number of soldiers and cultivators until one side either surrenders or depletes its forces. For their first battle, they agreed to send only 1,000 soldiers with a single spirit sovereign, 3 spirit kings, 20 spirit lords, 200 spirit grandmasters, and the rest spirit masters. However, the Seven Heavenly Order blatantly disregarded their agreement and sent 3 times the amount with 3 spirit sovereigns, 9 spirit kings, 60 spirit lords, 600 spirit grandmasters, and over 2,000 spirit masters. These sons of bitches. We need to get reinforcements. They won't make it. We'll all be dead before reinforcements arrive. What should we do? Run away? While the Xiu family's soldiers contemplated running away, the only spirit sovereign within their ranks suddenly stepped forward and pointed his silver spear at the enemy. So what if they outnumber us 3-1? They are just a bunch of cowards who cannot even fight fairly. How strong can they be? Follow me. I will pave the way to victory for us. Without waiting for a response, Xian fearlessly charged at the enemy. He made it halfway to the enemy without looking back to see if anyone had followed him. In his mind, even if he had to fight the entire army alone, it would not stop him. Aha! Charging at us alone. What a foolish bastard. Who is this idiot? How did he manage to reach Spirit Sovereign? The 3 Spirit Sovereigns laughed and mocked Xian openly. I can handle a dumbass like him by myself. one of the spirit sovereigns said as he confronted Xian. However, the spirit sovereign was slain by Xian after exchanging 3 mere blows with him. It didn't feel like a fight between spirit sovereigns, and was more like a true master bullying a toddler. This unexpected result shocked both sides to their core. Who is that soldier? How come I don't recognize him? Isn't that Xian? He's a royal guard for the Xiu family. But he looks so young. He has to be less than 20 years old. I have heard rumors of him, but I have never seen him fight before. The Xiu family's soldiers were overwhelmed with shock after witnessing Xian in action for the first time. Meanwhile, the 7 Heavenly Order's soldiers were trembling from fear. Seeing this, the remaining 2 spirit sovereigns went to confront Xian together in hopes of raising their fellow soldiers' morale. However, they also fell to Xian in less than 10 strikes. Holy fuck. He defeated all 3 spirit sovereigns by himself. He's even unharmed. We have a chance. We can defeat these cheating bastards. The morale of the Xiu family's soldiers soared when they witnessed Xian's overwhelming strength, and they swiftly followed him into battle against the enemy soldiers. Once Xian defeated the enemy spirit sovereigns, their morale plummeted to rock bottom, leaving them vulnerable to the onslaught of the Xiu family's soldiers, who swiftly overwhelmed them with ease. In less than 2 hours, the Xiu family's army emerged triumphant with only a few casualties. Meanwhile, the forces of the 7 Heavenly Order were utterly vanquished despite outnumbering their opponents. Word of Xian's unparalleled prowess on the battlefield quickly spread throughout the 4th heaven like wildfire, garnering him widespread acclaim and respect among both allies and adversaries alike. Ha! You should have been there to witness Xian's prowess. None of the enemy's spirit sovereigns were able to land a hit on him. The way he just marched toward the enemy alone without any hesitation and looking back. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. In the blink of an eye, Xian became a celebrity within the Xiu family's army. C1426 God of War. Chapter 1426 God of War 1426 God of War. Amazing work, Tian. You have exceeded our expectations. Emperor Xiu praised him when he returned from the battlefield. Tian. Xiu Mei flung herself into his embrace the moment she saw him. Ahem. Control yourself, Xiu Mei. You are not alone, and your relationship with him is still a secret. Emperor Xiu awkwardly cleared his throat. Who cares? Everybody in this room is aware of our relationship anyway, Xiu Mei said, refusing to let Tian go. But pretty much everyone outside of this circle is already aware of their secret relationship. The royal advisor and the others thought to themselves as they looked at Xiu Mei and Tian. Xiu Mei's demeanor around Tian spoke volumes, leaving little doubt about the intimacy of their relationship to anyone observing, even a blind man. The only thing lacking was official confirmation. Sometime later, Tian asked, "So when is the next battle?" Xiu Mei looked at him with wide eyes and said, "You want to participate in another battle? Isn't one enough? The entire city is already aware of your prowess, so why would you want to participate in another battle?" Tian then said, "I won't stop until the 7 Heavenly Order is gone." "I like your dedication." The generals laughed out loud. 12:09 I like your dedication. The generals laughed out loud. Emperor Xiu nodded. "I will notify you when the next battle is decided." Due to the 7 Heavenly Orders disregarding their agreement, things would only get more complicated. After all, the Xiu family could no longer trust them. In the end, they scheduled the second battle to take place the following month with 2,000 soldiers on each side. However, wary of the 7 Heavenly Orders' potential treachery, the Xiu family stationed their reinforcements a few miles away from the battlefield. Should the 7 Heavenly Orders breach the agreement once more, the Xiu family was prepared to swiftly deploy their reinforcements without hesitation. The 7 Heavenly Orders showed up with exactly 2,000 soldiers this time, but they also had reinforcements stationed not far away from the battlefield. Look at that young man in front of the formation. That must be Tian, the unstoppable tyrant. The soldiers of the 7 Heavenly Order swiftly recognized Tian's presence within their formation. dubbing him Unstoppable Tyrant due to his formidable performance in the previous battle. Just like the previous battle, only a single spirit sovereign was allowed to partake in the battle. However, once the battle began, the 7 heavenly orders revealed that they had hidden 9 additional spirit sovereigns within their formation. Kill the Unstoppable Tyrant. Despite the potential damage to their reputation, the 7 heavenly order couldn't afford to let Xian dominate the battlefield once more. Therefore, they resolved to swiftly eliminate him during the second battle. Humph. I knew I could count on you cowardly bastards to use such dirty tactics. Xian sneered in disdain when he realized that he was surrounded by 10 spirit sovereigns. Yet in less than 5 minutes, Xian slew all of them while suffering only minor injuries. After killing the spirit sovereigns, Xian's prowess on the battlefield was unmatched, and the battle concluded before the Xiu family could even summon their reinforcements. Once again, Xian carved through the enemy forces like an unstoppable force of nature. With each swing of his spear, more than 20 enemy soldiers would fall, their morale shattered by Xian's relentless onslaught. These dirty fucking bastards. If it weren't for Xian's overwhelming talent, I would have lost my son-in-law today. Emperor Xiu and the others expressed their anger after learning of the situation. Damn it. Your Majesty, let's forget about these skirmishes and launch a full-scale attack on these bastards. Yeah. If these bastards want to play dirty, let's show them how dirty we can get. However, the Xiu family quickly realized that their concerns would be alleviated without them having to take any action. We never intended on meddling with your war, but we cannot ignore such disgraceful behavior being displayed before our eyes in our own continent. If the 7 heavenly order continues their nonsense, we will join the Xiu family to get rid of you pests. When the neutral sects and other factions of the 4th heaven that have been watching from the sidelines learned of the 7 heavenly orders' dishonorable actions, they united together and threatened to assist the Xiu family, leaving the 7 heavenly orders with no choice but to reconsider their actions. After being warned by their neutral neighbors, the 7 heavenly orders refrained from employing underhanded tactics and committed to engaging in future battles with honesty and integrity. However, if the 7 heavenly order couldn't defeat Xian with underhanded tactics, they had no hope of defeating him in a fair fight. A dozen battles later, the 7 heavenly order suffered 12 crushing defeats at the hands of Xian. Despite hiring renowned spirit sovereign and spirit enlightenment mercenaries from across the divine heaven, the 7 heavenly orders found no success in defeating Xian. Meanwhile, with each victory, Xian's reputation soared, his name echoing throughout the 4th heaven like some kind of deity. The war between the 7 heavenly orders and the Xiu family lasted over a decade, spanning more than 100 battles. Xian participated in every single battle, grew stronger after each battle, and emerged victorious in all of them. Moreover, cultivators from around the world would spectate these battles and offer Xian an exalted position within their faction, but he respectfully declined all of them. In the end, Xian stormed the 7 heavenly orders' headquarters and personally executed the young masters who bullied him in the past. After the war concluded, Xian was crowned the nickname God of War by those around him. His engagement with Xiu was also officially announced by the Xiu family, and they performed the marriage ceremony in the same year, becoming husband and wife, which surprised nobody. C1427 The Beginning of the End. Chapter 1427 The Beginning of the End. 1427 The Beginning of the End. Once again, congratulations on your marriage, Emperor Xiu said to Xian after the wedding in a private meeting. Thank you for allowing me to marry Xiu, father. You will not regret this, Xian said with a smile on his face. Haha. Why are you being so humble out of nowhere? It's weird. Emperor Xiu laughed out loud. After chatting for a while, Emperor Xiu spoke with a serious expression on his face. Let's talk about why I called you here, Xian. Now that you are officially part of our family, do you have any desire to rule your own territory? My own territory? Xian raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Indeed. You are no longer just a soldier with a duty. Now that you are one of us, you have 2 options. 1. Remain here and compete with the others for my position as its emperor. Or 2. Leave and build your own empire. Of course, I will support you regardless of your decision. After hearing his choices, Xian, without hesitation, responded, I will leave this place to build my own empire. Emperor Xiu smiled and said, I knew you would say that. As much as I hate to admit it, this place is too small for you, Xian. You're already stronger than me by an entire realm. Go build your own empire. One that is worthy of the one called God of War. Your talents will surely bring you to a place where even I have to tilt my head and look up. What about Xiaomei? Xian then asked. Why are you asking me? You're responsible for her now, so make your own decisions. Emperor Xiu quickly said. So you won't be upset if I decide to take her with me? Of course, I will be upset. However, she is already an adult. If she wants to follow you to the edge of the world, I have no authority over her decision. Xian went to speak with Xiaomei after his conversation with Emperor Xiu ended. To his surprise, Xiaomei didn't object to his decision at all. In fact, she even encouraged it. Why do you look so surprised? I know you're not the type to linger in this small place when you could be doing much bigger things. Not that this small city could handle someone like you. As a matter of fact, I have been wanting to leave this place for some time now and planned on speaking to you about relocating soon. Xiaomei said. After receiving Xiaomei's answer, the two of them returned to Emperor Xiu to further plan their departure. Do you have a location in mind? If it's within my power, I can help you with acquiring the land. Emperor Xiu said. Xian pondered for a moment before responding. Do you know where the soldiers found me? I want to build a city around there. That's a little too close to this city, which could cause problems. However, there's a small village not too far away from that place. Since I own that territory, I can arrange it so that you will become its new lord. Emperor Xiu said. Xian nodded. Let's do that. Thus, Emperor Xiu transferred said territory to Xian, who immediately relocated to the village with Xiaomei. When news of Xian's departure spread, many of the soldiers who had fought alongside him expressed a desire to follow him. However, if Emperor Xiu allowed them to join Xian, too many soldiers would leave, risking the collapse of their army. Yet, Emperor Xiu decided to lend 10,000 soldiers to Xian for the time being. The seasons changed swiftly, and in the blink of an eye, a decade had passed since Xian started managing his own territory. In just a decade, Xian successfully transformed a small village into a bustling city with a population of 20,000. Additionally, he established a small yet formidable army of 100 soldiers that could rival 5,000 soldiers, personally overseeing their training and development. Dongyi, I am promoting you to general. Congratulations on becoming the first to reach such a rank in our army. Xian said to the stern yet loyal middle-aged man before him. Dongyi immediately got on his knees and bowed. This unworthy one is eternally grateful to the city lord for this opportunity. I will not disappoint you. A decade, 2 decades, 50 years, after a century, the city of Xian had grown to rival even the largest cities in the fourth heaven with a population of over 10 million. They expanded their territory, stretching its boundaries far beyond their initial limits, while their military prowess became unmatched, casting a formidable shadow over the entire region. Numerous factions have attempted to halt its expansion or conquer the city of Xian, yet they were all thwarted before even nearing the city's front gates, allowing the citizens to live a peaceful life with a deep sense of security. Xian's influence and stature had long surpassed that of the Xiu family, yet he steadfastly refused to ascend to the status of emperor, opting instead to remain a humble city lord. As for Xiaomei, she spent half of her time assisting Xian in managing the city amongst other things, and the other half improving her cultivation, so that she could stay in this world with her beloved husband longer. While Xiaomei couldn't even dream of catching up to Xian's cultivation, it was enough for her to live a very long life. 100 years, 300 years, 900 years later, the city of Xian stopped expanding after 250 years of establishment, but it continued to increase its citizens' quality of life and military might. Xian stopped working as much and started spending most of his time with Xiaomei, who gave up working entirely after she became pregnant with his child. It's a girl, Tian. What should we name her? I am not good with names, so I will let you decide. Then I will think of something. However, halfway into Xiaomai's pregnancy, a messenger bearing the Celestial Emperor's medallion entered the city of Xian with a simple yet terrifying message for its city lord, Tian. Unbeknownst to Tian at that time, this marked the beginning of the end of his seemingly perfect life. C1428 The First Celestial Emperor. Chapter 1428 The First Celestial Emperor 1428 The First Celestial Emperor. Messenger from the Celestial Palace. What purpose do you have here in my city? Tian spoke as he gazed upon the messenger from his seat. The messenger looked at Tian's arrogant presence with a slight frown on his face, but he refrained from saying anything, as his mission was to recruit Tian. I am here on behalf of His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor, the messenger said as he retrieved a scroll and unsealed it. Tian, one recognized as the God of War, immortal of the battlefield. Your war stories have reached even I, the first Celestial Emperor, Emperor of the Divine Heavens. As an admirer of your indomitable presence on the battlefield, I hereby offer you a position in my celestial army as its Supreme General. As the Supreme General, you will have unimaginable authority within the army, second only to I, the Celestial Commander. Should you accept this position, I shall grant you unlimited wealth, unfathomable power, widespread fame, as well as any single wish within my authority as the ruler of the divine heaven. Tian listened to the Celestial Emperor's message with a nonchalant expression on his face. If it were anybody else in his shoes, they would have been jumping up and down in excitement over such a generous offer. The position of Celestial Emperor came into existence about 100,000 years ago, when the patriarch of the most powerful family in the divine heaven decided to rule over the divine heaven. Despite facing considerable opposition from various factions and individuals who questioned the idea of bestowing such immense power and authority upon a single individual, the patriarch had an equal amount of support from those who stood to gain from it. Thus, the Celestial Emperor came into existence with half of the divine heaven against it, and the other half supporting it. With the passage of time, the influence of the Celestial Emperor extended its reach, gradually engulfing the entire divine heaven. The power of the Celestial Emperor grew to such an extent that defiance against it became an act of inevitable self-destruction, as his enemies faced swift and merciless judgment, leaving little room for opposition or resistance. The unchecked power and authority wielded by the Celestial Emperor became a tool for exploitation, not only by the Emperor himself, but also by those who surrounded him, leading to corruption and manipulation on an unprecedented scale. Under the dominion of the Celestial Emperor, cultivation resources, precious treasures, and even the natural phenomena of the world fell under its exclusive control. Those who did not submit to its authority were barred from accessing these vital assets, forcing all to pledge allegiance or face deprivation. In response to the tyrannical rule of the Celestial Emperor, countless individuals came together and challenged its oppressive regime, sparking the conflict known as the Heavenly War of Immortals and Gods. The Heavenly War of Immortals and Gods lasted for tens of thousands of years, and was nearing its end with the Celestial Emperor having the upper hand. However, the Celestial Emperor was impatient and wanted to end the war as soon as possible, so he sought out Tian, a renowned warlord who had risen to prominence less than 1,000 years ago, intrigued by tales of his achievements. However, after receiving the Celestial Emperor's offer, Tian scoffed inwardly at the messenger and spoke in a calm manner. I don't need such an exalted position, so I will have to decline his offer. Tian actually wanted to curse out the messenger and the Celestial Emperor, but he refrained from doing so. Enraged by Tian's refusal, the messenger's composure shattered, his voice booming with rage. You arrogant little bastard! How dare you refuse the Celestial Emperor's generous offer? You are just a nobody from some backwater background. How dare you? Dongyi, who was standing beside Tian, immediately drew his sword and pointed it at the messenger. However, Tian quickly gestured for Dongyi to stop and said, Indeed, I am a nobody, a frog in a well. Therefore, it wouldn't make any sense for me to accept the Celestial Emperor's offer. You may return to the Celestial Emperor and tell him that. Good. You will regret this. The messenger did not linger and immediately left. I knew the Celestial Emperor would make a move on us eventually. Xian sighed afterward. The Celestial Emperor is truly overbearing and arrogant. Even his lackeys are disgusting. I completely understand why there is a war against him right now. Dong Yi sneered in disdain. Prepare the army just in case they want to start something. We will most likely see that messenger again. Xian said a moment later. As you command. Dong Yi bowed before leaving. True to expectations, several weeks later, the messenger returned with another offer. However, it was a far cry from the previous one. Instead of the prestigious position of Supreme General, the Celestial Emperor now offered Xian the humble role of a foot soldier. A drastic downgrade from his initial proposal. Xian laughed at the offer and made a soldier turn away the messenger without even seeing him. The messenger returned a month later, but this time there was no offer to negotiate. The Celestial Emperor's message was clear and ominous. Either Xian worked for him or faced utter destruction. In response to the threat, Xian killed the messenger and sent his decapitated head back to the Celestial Palace. A week later, hundreds of Celestial Emperor's soldiers showed up at the front gate with the intention of going to war with them. Naturally, Xian had prepared for the Celestial Emperor's confrontation and led his army to face their enemies, quickly slaughtering them. Xian's refusal to bow to the Celestial Emperor quickly became the talk of the divine heaven, reigniting the flames of the dying heavenly war. After experiencing Xian's prowess firsthand, the Celestial Emperor quickly realized that had been trying to tame an uncontrollable monster, deeply regretting it. C1429 The Birth of Evil God. Chapter 1429 The Birth of Evil God. 1429 The Birth of Evil God. Why, Your Majesty? That arrogant bastard slew the soldiers we sent again. At this rate, we'll lose all of our spare soldiers to him. The current Supreme General of the Celestial Army reported to the Celestial Emperor. Frustration clenched the Celestial Emperor's teeth together. If not for the diversion of his main army in the heavenly war of immortals and gods, he could have easily crushed Xian. But alas, his only option was to dispatch his reserve forces, as his enemies could potentially change the tide of their war if he weakened his main army even slightly. It's been 6 years since Xian openly defied the Celestial Emperor. Tens of thousands of soldiers from the Celestial Emperor had perished to Xian, who was only becoming more formidable with every fight. If I don't take care of this little bastard soon, he'll definitely become a real thorn in my side. The Celestial Emperor wanted to recruit Xian to end the war quicker, but he ended up making Xian an enemy, who now had the potential to prolong the war. The realization that Xian could be the catalyst for his downfall drove the Celestial Emperor to the brink of madness. How dare a mere city lord defy me, the Celestial Emperor? Supreme General, I don't care what it takes or how much you dirty your hands. I want that bastard to despair. I want him to regret defying me. While you distract him with some soldiers, sneak into the city and remove his loved ones from existence. The Celestial Emperor roared, his eyes bloodshot. As Your Majesty commands. The Supreme General did not have an ounce of hesitation within his voice despite being given such an order. The following month, 10,000 soldiers arrived at the city of Xian, looking more ominous than ever. When Xian saw this, he immediately left the city to confront them as usual. Of course, he left behind some soldiers to guard the city and his beloved wife just in case. Unfortunately, the Supreme General was in existence that even Xian's strongest soldiers had no hopes of defeating in a group. Thus, the Supreme General sneaked into the city of Xian without alerting anyone, located Xian's living quarters, and silently killed all of the soldiers guarding it, before entering the building. Inside, a woman sat on the bed, silently caressing her round stomach that looked like it was about to burst at any moment. Who's there? Xiaomei was immediately alerted when the formation around the building was suddenly destroyed. The door to her room was kicked down the next second, and a figure soaked in blood casually walked inside, his weapon still dripping with blood. Who are you? Xiaomei could instantly tell at a glance that she was no match for this individual, and that she had no hopes of escaping. I am your executioner, said the Supreme General in a cold voice. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because your husband offended someone he couldn't afford to offend, and now he will pay the price for defying His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor. Despite her seemingly helpless situation, Xiaomei did not let fear control her and even smiled. I'm surprised it took you so long to come after me. Humph. The Supreme General coldly sneered as he slowly approached her. The Celestial Emperor's decision to dispatch the Supreme General to the city of Xian during a critical juncture of the heavenly war of immortals and gods risked their current advantage in the conflict. Yet, the Celestial Emperor deemed Tian to be threatening enough to take such a risk. This is also why the Celestial Emperor only ordered the Supreme General to assassinate Xiaomei, since he wouldn't be able to kill Tian without revealing his presence there to their enemies. Ah. I'm truly sorry, my darling, for being such a useless wife and mother. Xiaomei knew that fighting back or trying to escape would only be futile effort, so she used what little time she had left to think of Tian and recall all of the time they'd spent together. Meanwhile, when Tian sensed that the formation around his house had been destroyed in the midst of his fight with the Celestial Army, he, without any hesitation, abandoned the battlefield for the first time in his life as a soldier and rushed back to the city. Please let me make it back in time. He prayed inwardly until he returned home. When he arrived, he ignored the corpses that surrounded his house and immediately went inside the building. Xiaomei, are you okay? Tian shouted as he rushed to her room. However, his movements froze when he reached the entrance to her room. Standing outside the broken entrance, he could see the horrific scene inside the room. There was blood splattered everywhere, staining the walls, ceiling, and furniture. And in the center of this room was a lifeless body that had its limbs severed. However, the true horror lay in the grotesque sight of the bodice's stomach, savagely cut open and ripped apart to reveal the small, helpless figure nestled within. Seeing this gruesome scene, Tian fell to his knees with a loud thud, his face filled with shock and despair. Xiaomei. Ah. Ah. Tian released an inhuman cry that shook the entire city. Tears filled his eyes and flowed down his face like two streams during a rainstorm, quickly turning into blood a few moments later. Suddenly, Tian stopped moving and collapsed into the puddle of blood beneath him. However, he hadn't lost consciousness. In fact, he was wide awake, and something mythical was happening inside his head. Memories of a life that he didn't recognize were flowing into his mind. Sometime later, Tian slowly pushed himself off the floor, muttering in a low voice, Tianyang, Huang Shaoli, Shura. As clarity returned to his mind, Tian fury surged like a tempest, his fists clenched so tightly that the bones within shattered under the force of his rage. Overwhelming killing intent and bloodlust emanated from him, so intense that it materialized into a thick crimson fog, shrouding the entire city in its ominous embrace. And his once brown eyes now glowed with a menacing red hue, as if they had been soaked in fresh blood. Celestial Emperor. I will not rest until I slaughter everyone around you and bathe in your blood. Thus, the one who would soon terrorize the divine heaven as the evil god was born. C1430 Tian's Wrath. Chapter 1430 Tian's Wrath. 1430 Tian's Wrath. After experiencing the most traumatic event in his life, Tian recalled his previous life and regained all of Tianyang's memories. Once again, I was unable to protect my beloved. Tian muttered in a dazed voice as he left the building. When Tian walked outside, the crimson fog that shrouded the entire city like a blanket began thickening to the point where visibility was reduced to near zero, rendering it nearly impossible for anyone without divine sense to see beyond a few inches ahead. Furthermore, the bloodlust coming from Tian was so immense that it suffocated everyone in the city, knocking many citizens unconscious, especially the mortals. This sudden and ominous phenomenon terrified all of the citizens, as it looked like doomsday had arrived. Tian Xian ignored the chaos within the city and turned to look in the direction where the Celestial Emperor's soldiers were still engaged in a fierce fight with his own army. He flew into the air and soared toward the battlefield the next instant, leaving behind a trail of bloodlust that scattered in every direction, quickly covering the sky and causing the world to darken. Meanwhile, on the ongoing battlefield, the Celestial Army was slowly pushing back Tian Xian's army after his sudden disappearance. "Where's the city lord?" "I don't know," but he suddenly took off with a nervous look on his face, and I have never seen such anxiety from him before. Look at the sky. What's that?" One of the soldiers there pointed at the red sky when he noticed it. It didn't take long before nearly every soldier on the battlefield noticed the red sky, looking like someone had painted it with blood. That's killing intent. I have never seen such bloodlust before. I didn't know killing intent could materialize in such a manner. How much killing intent does it require to cause such a phenomenon? I would be more worried about the person exhibiting such bloodlust. The very next moment, a silhouette appeared in the distance. However, everyone was too distracted by the red sky to notice him. In the blink of an eye, this shadowy figure arrived at the battlefield and hurtled toward the battlefield without any pauses in alarming speed. Before anyone could react, the figure dove headlong into the ranks of the Celestial Army, shattering their formation in an instant. What the hell was that? Someone just invaded our formation. They must have a death wish. As Tian Xian breached the rear lines of the Celestial Army, he found himself encircled by thousands of foes on all sides, with no allies in sight. However, this worked in Tian Xian's favor, as this allowed him to go on a rampage without needing to worry about harming his allies by accident. After all, in Tian Xian's enraged current state, discerning friends from foes was a luxury he couldn't afford. The moment Tian Xian landed on the ground, he immediately started swinging his silver spear like a madman, killing everyone around him. Due to his immense killing intent that blocked the soldiers' views, they were forced to use divine sense to locate him. Moreover, the shocking amount of bloodlust caused even these seasoned warriors to freeze, hindering their movement and allowing Tian Xian to kill them without any retaliation. The Celestial Army sent as a decoy became the first ones to experience Tian Xian's wrath. As Tian Xian killed everyone around him without discrimination, the soldiers' limbs and flesh flew all over the place, causing the sky to rain blood and human flesh. Oh, where the fuck did this monster come from? It's Tian Xian. The God of War is back. What? But why is he in our rear formation? His army is on the opposite side. I don't know what's going on, but we need to focus on him first. Once we kill Tian Xian, the others will fall like flies without their commander. When the Celestial Army realized Tian Xian had returned, and even found himself amidst their ranks, they halted their advance toward the city of Xian, and swarmed him like a colony of ants confronting a foreign intruder. Tian Xian's army was left dumbfounded and puzzled when their enemies suddenly turned around and started running away. Wait. Where the hell do you think you are going? Hold on. I can sense a disturbance in the direction they are running to. This is the City Lord's spiritual energy. He's finally returned. But why is he so far away from us? Who cares about the reason? We need to back him up. Thus, Tian Xian's soldiers started chasing after the Celestial Army, when they also realized that their commander was fighting the enemy by himself. However, when they could finally witness the scene of Tian Xian slaughtering the Celestial Army like a mindless barbarian, the soldiers were left aghast, even terrified by his appearance. That's our city lord. He looks like a different person. What happened to him in the short amount of time that he left? Even I have never seen him like this before. Dong Yi said in a dazed voice as he watched Tian Xian slaughter the enemy, with a look of profound admiration on his face. Dong Yi has always admired Tian Xian, but there was something different about the current Tian Xian. Unlike the dignified and gentle nature he was familiar with, Tian Xian currently gave off a barbaric, ruthless, and almost inhuman feeling, similar to that of a wild beast. No, even wild beasts would not be so vicious. He's more like an evil being, one that was born out of pure malice, an evil god. Dong Yi muttered, feeling unfathomable reverence toward Tian Xian's new appearance. Tian Xian's soldiers were perplexed once they saw Tian Xian's current appearance. They were unsure whether they should rush to his aid or hold back, considering his overwhelming aura of killing intent and the chaotic situation on the battlefield. Some hesitated, torn between their loyalty to Tian Xian and their fear of the dark energy emanating from him. I have a feeling that we'll also be killed if we interrupt him right now. Does he even need our help? It looks like he can deal with their entire army by himself. Just what in heaven's name happened to the city lord during his absence? His eyes even turned red. Was he bewitched by some kind of evil technique? That would explain his behavior, sort of. C1431 Creation of the Shadow Army. Chapter 1431 Creation of the Shadow Army. 1431 Creation of the Shadow Army. The more Tian Xian's army watched him massacre the Celestial Army, the less they wanted to interfere. In the end, his soldiers could only stand in the distance like a group of stone statues, and watch as piles of corpses quickly formed into mountains. An hour later, Tian Xian lowered his spear after killing every single soldier from the Celestial Army. Some of the soldiers tried to escape toward the end of the battle when they realized that he was unkillable, but Tian Xian chased after each and every single one with a profound movement technique that he never displayed before until today. As Tian Xian stood in a sea of blood and beside mountains of corpses, he held a dazed look on his face. He stared at the red sky with his blood soaking every inch of his body, looking like he'd just jumped into a bath filled with blood. Despite the carnage he wrought upon the Celestial Emperor's soldiers, Tian Xian found no satisfaction in his actions. His bloodlust remained unquenched, soaring skyward like a relentless tempest, leaving him feeling no better than before. His soldiers remained distant from him, fearing that he might attack them if they got too close. However, a fearless individual eventually approached him and kneeled before him in the sea of blood. "My lord, what are your commands?" Dong Yi asked. After a moment of silence, without looking away from the sky, Tian Xian muttered in a low voice, "I am stepping down from the position of city lord, as I have to leave for a long time. I don't know when I will be back, if I ever will. Dong Yi, I will leave the military and the city in your hands. Be but my lord. Don't follow me." Before Dong Yi could even finish his sentence, Tian Xian flew toward the red sky and disappeared into it. Dong Yi was left speechless. He wanted to chase after Tian Xian, but he didn't dare to defy Tian Xian's order. In the end, Dong Yi could only relay Tian Xian's words to the other soldiers. The city lord left his position and won't return. What will happen to the city of Xian now? What about our military? Where did the commander go? Why did he suddenly abandon everything? Although these soldiers were filled with questions, they eventually understood the situation when they returned to the city and saw the scene at Tian Xian's house, who left in a hurry and never got the chance to clean up the mess at his house. Dong Yi and the others were overwhelmed with sorrow and anger when they saw the gruesome scene inside Tian Xian's house. Most of them were familiar with Xiu Mei and treated her as though she was a goddess, so one could imagine the shock they received when they saw what had happened to her and her unborn child. Unable to leave Xiu Mei in such a state, Dong Yi and the others gave her a proper burial, and even held a mass funeral for her. Many hoped Tian Xian would show up during the funeral, but alas, he was nowhere to be seen. After the funeral, Dong Yi and the rest of the army gathered to discuss their future. The commander is most likely fighting the Celestial Emperor and his army all by himself right now. He left everything behind because he didn't want us to be targeted as well. Damn it! How could we let such a thing happen to the city lord and fairy Xiu after everything they've done for us? We are so fucking useless. Isn't there anything we can do for the city lord? I refused to sit still after what happened. After hearing the soldier's complaint, Dong Yi stepped forward and spoke in a grim voice. "I have a suggestion," he continued. "I am going to assist the lord in his revenge. As powerful as our lord may be, he cannot deal with the Celestial Emperor by himself. If you want to come with me, raise your hand. Otherwise you may leave, as this will likely result in our deaths." The very next moment, every soldier who had fought alongside Tian Xian raised their hands, their faces filled with determination. Someone then spoke. But how can we assist him? We're all too weak. And the commander had specifically told us not to follow him. Dong Yi closed his eyes and pondered for several minutes before responding. Indeed, we are too weak to do anything to the Celestial Emperor right now. However, things will not remain this way forever. Moreover, there are several ways to assist the Lord without letting him know. That sounds good. I'm all for it. Then starting today, we'll move in the shadows and assist the Lord from a place he cannot see. We shall become the Shadow Army. Yeah. Down with the Celestial Emperor and his lackeys. For the City Lord. For Fairy Xiu. For their child. This moment marked the birth of the Shadow Army, evil god's most fearsome and mysterious army that would play a massive role in helping Xian defeat the Celestial Emperor. Moreover, following Dong Yi and others' revelation of the dire circumstances to the rest of the city, the citizens rallied behind the cause, offering their unwavering support to the Shadow Army. The city of Xian, once the home of Xian, now served as the bedrock for the establishment of the Shadow Army. Together, they forged a network to gather information and resources to support the fight against the Celestial Emperor, eventually becoming Divine Heaven's most formidable and largest information-gathering network. Since Xian left the city of Xian and started hunting down the Celestial Army throughout the Divine Heaven, the Celestial Emperor stopped paying about them, allowing the city to grow without much hindrance. While many have tried to claim the city of Xian for themselves after news of Xian's departure spread, the Shadow Army made sure to keep the place untouched for Xian's return. Despite the absence of Xian, the Shadow Army remained as a formidable force, composed of veterans and prodigies who had been meticulously trained by him. United by a newfound purpose and vision, they continued to grow stronger with each passing day, fueled by their unwavering determination and commitment to their cause. C1432 Heaven's Defiance. Chapter 1432 Heaven's Defiance. 1432 Heaven's Defiance. Watch out. It's Tian, the evil god. One of the Celestial Army's soldiers cried out loud in a terrified voice when he noticed Xian's figure approaching their formation from a distance, carrying with him enough killing intent to scare even ghosts. Fuck. Why'd he have to show up now of all times? We were beginning to push back those Heaven's Defiance bastards. Another soldier cursed out loud. There's no way we can deal with the evil god and Heaven's Defiance at the same time. We're screwed. The forces opposing the Celestial Emperor in the heavenly war of immortals and gods adopted the name, Heaven's Defiance, as a symbolic gesture, implying their defiance against the Celestial Emperor, who claimed to represent heaven itself. As for the title Evil God, nobody seemed to know the origin of such a name, but it quickly spread throughout the divine heavens, becoming widely recognized and associated with Tian, who was once known as the God of War. When Tian arrived at the battlefield, wielding a spear in one hand and a sword in the other, he immediately began slaughtering the Celestial Army like a madman. The evil god has appeared on our battlefield. We need to retreat before our own people get caught up in his bloodbath. Thank the Lord. If he hadn't shown up, we would have been in grave danger. Those from Heaven's Defiance, without hesitation, withdrew from the battle when they noticed Tian's presence on the battlefield. After all, Heaven's Defiance had already attempted to fight alongside Tian during their initial encounter. However, his relentless assault showed no regard for friend or foe, resulting in casualties among their own ranks. Despite suffering losses at Tian's hands, Heaven's Defiance refrained from seeking retribution, and even tried to assist him on several other occasions. They recognized that targeting Tian would be counterproductive. After all, he was cutting down the Celestial Army at a rapid rate by himself, and was their best hope of defeating the Celestial Emperor. While Tian chased after the scattering Celestial Army, Heaven's Defiance worked on stopping the Celestial Army from escaping. Ha ha ha. Where do you think you're going, Celestial Emperor's dogs? You think you can run away now? Look at you pathetic bastards. What happened to your arrogance from a minute ago? You have been shaking in your boots since the evil god showed up. Those from Heaven's Defiance laughed, and mocked the Celestial Army's soldiers for their cowardice as they prevented the Celestial Army's escape, allowing Xian to slaughter them at a much faster pace. Eventually, Xian erased the Celestial Army from existence. After taking care of the Celestial Army, he immediately left the scene to find the next battlefield with the Celestial Army's presence, completely ignoring those from Heaven's Defiance. As for Heaven's Defiance, they could only silently admire Xian as they watched him leave. In their eyes, Xian appeared out of thin air one day and started slaughtering everyone working for the Celestial Emperor, or had worked for him at one point. It didn't matter if they were the active Celestial Army or some small family that once worked with the Celestial Emperor 100 years ago. He hunted everyone affiliated with the Celestial Emperor, without exception. Fuck. That fucking son of a bitch, Xian, has been wreaking havoc throughout the divine heavens and slaughtering my people non-stop for the last 100 years. How is he still alive? Explain yourself, Supreme General. The Celestial Emperor roared with an enraged face, his gaze staring daggers at the Supreme General, who was soaked in cold sweat. The Supreme General, trembling in his boots, spoke in a nervous voice. Your Majesty, I truly don't know what is happening. Xian was nowhere near this powerful when he was still a city lord at the city of Xian. His rapid growth and newfound power are far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. No matter what we throw at him, he somehow always manages to escape. Moreover, he never stays in one place. Even if we know he'll hunt down our allies, it's near impossible to predict his actions. Even though it's been 100 years since Xian left the city of Xian to hunt down the Celestial Emperor and his allies, he has long attained a level of cultivation that typically requires geniuses hundreds, if not thousands, of years to achieve even marginal progress, so the way he's growing like he was still a spirit lord did not make any sense. Xian's progress was simply unprecedented and unfathomable in the Supreme General's eyes. Bang! The Celestial Emperor suddenly smashed his jade table into tiny pieces and shouted, I didn't ask for excuses, Supreme General. I asked why that fucking bastard is still alive. If you cannot do your job properly, I will have you replaced immediately. The Supreme General was horrified by the Celestial Emperor's words and the looming threat of being replaced, and he quickly kowtowed on the cold floor. This useless subordinate was wrong. Please give me another chance to dispose of Xian. This will be your first and last warning. Get out of my sight. The Celestial Emperor stomped his feet, causing the entire building to tremble. The Supreme General wasted no time and swiftly left the room, his mind consumed by the urgent task of hunting down Xian. In just a mere century, Xian had inflicted more damage upon their forces than Heaven's Defiance had managed to do in the past millennium, and he was working mostly alone. I refused to let my tens of thousands of years of hard work vanish because of a single individual. The Supreme General no longer held back and started sending his elite soldiers to hunt down Xian. Unlike the ordinary soldiers of the Celestial Army that were at most golden immortals, these elite soldiers were all real immortals between the true immortal realm and God Ascension realm. C1433 Cat and Mouse. Chapter 1433 Cat and Mouse. 1433 Cat and Mouse. With 100 elite soldiers at his command, the Supreme General wasted no time, setting off immediately on his mission to hunt down Xian. Among these elite soldiers, 80 were at the true immortal realm, 15 at the first level God Ascension realm, and the remaining 5 at the second level God Ascension realm. At that time, the strongest cultivator was only at the 5th level God Ascension realm, so one can imagine the immense prowess of this elite army compared to the ordinary soldiers, who were at most golden immortal level. As for Xian, he was only a true immortal at this time, so it was overkill to send so many powerful experts after him, but the Supreme General couldn't care less, and wanted to get rid of Xian without giving him any chance of survival. However, even though the Supreme General had such a powerful army at his command, they still had to find Xian first. Due to the immense size of their world, the divine heaven, it would take hundreds if not thousands of years to travel around the world even with the help of flying treasure. Hence why Xian hadn't been caught after 100 years of carnage. as he would immediately leave after killing his enemies. Moreover, Xian was only a single individual, which made it even harder to track him down. The Supreme General could only show up to witness the aftermath of Xian's carnage, then attempt to predict his next destination and hope to close their gap. But with battles between the Celestial Emperor's supporters and Heaven's Defiance occurring in hundreds of locations around the world, it was easier said than done. Whenever Xian's sixth sense alerted him of imminent danger, he would immediately halt his killing spree and hide for several years to enter secluded cultivation, further increasing his strength and making it even more difficult for the Supreme General to catch him. This tricky cat-and-mouse game between Xian and the Supreme General would last for another 300 years until Xian broke through the true immortal realm and entered first-level God Ascension. Once Xian entered the God Ascension realm, he became much bolder and started attacking the Celestial Emperor's forces even more frequently. Who are you? Why are you attacking our Gu family? Do you have any idea who you're messing with? We have the Celestial Emperor's backing. Oh, have mercy. Please. Spare my children. And monster. You are not human, you monster. Xian ignored their screaming and slaughtered all of them without any mercy, regardless of their age or gender. Once Xian left the Gu family's household without leaving a single person alive, he lingered in the place for a moment to uproot the entire building, something he hadn't bothered doing before. Fuck. What the fuck are they doing? The Celestial Emperor blew a massive hole in his room after receiving news of the Gu family's destruction. For the past 300 years, he had endured the relentless onslaught of news reporting the annihilation of his allies by Xian, each report tearing away at the fabric of his power and influence. As for the Supreme General, he didn't dare to return to the Celestial Palace without Xian's head in his grasp, so he has been absent for 300 years, and his absence left a conspicuous void within the ranks of the Celestial Army. Meanwhile, when Heaven's Defiance learned of his absence, they immediately became more aggressive and daring, further complicating the already challenging situation for the Celestial Army. After another 200 years of no results, the Celestial Emperor called back the Supreme General. You are fucking fired, you useless piece of shit. I gave you 500 years to hunt down a single man, and what have you accomplished in 500 years? Absolutely nothing. The Celestial Emperor slapped the Supreme General so hard he fell on the ground. However, the Celestial Emperor didn't stop there and started kicking and stomping on the Supreme General while he was still down. Even though the Supreme General was an immortal, he didn't dare to retaliate against the Celestial Emperor, and accepted the beating without uttering a single sound. This useless subordinate has failed your majesty, the Celestial Emperor. I don't deserve my position. The Supreme General immediately got on his knees after the Celestial Emperor stopped beating him. Scram! The Celestial Emperor shouted at him. Excuse me. The Supreme General immediately left. After leaving the Celestial Palace and going somewhere far away, the Supreme General unleashed all of his built-up anger on a random city, killing thousands of innocent mortals. Xian, this is all your fault. I MORU, swear to hunt you down until my last breath. After destroying an innocent city, MORU resumed his hunt for Xian alone, hoping to regain the Celestial Emperor's trust and his position as the Supreme General with Xian's head. 1,000 years later, MORU finally encountered Tian. However, it wasn't because MORU had successfully hunted down Tian. In fact, it was the other way around with Tian hunting down MORU. I have finally found you, evil god. MORU's entire being trembled from excitement after seeing Tian. Because of you, I was removed from my position as Supreme General. Because of you, the Celestial Emperor tossed me aside. You will regret ever challenging the Celestial Emperor today. Tian remained silent. Suddenly, as though a tempest of rage had been unleashed, a titanic wave of bloodlust surged forth from Tian's body, enveloping the heavens and the earth in its oppressive aura, spanning a vast expanse of 100 miles in every direction. And as if in response to his immense emotions, the very fabric of the heavens seemed to tremble, unleashing torrents of red and black lightning that crackled and danced ominously in the skies above. in a voice that seemed to chill the very air around him. Xian muttered with a tone that could freeze the blood in one's veins and even raise the dead, his eyes ablaze with a profound and unsettling glow, like smoldering embers in the darkness. I have been waiting for this day for over 1,000 years. C1434 Confronting the Supreme General. Chapter 1434 Confronting the Supreme General. 1434 Confronting the Supreme General. I have been waiting for this day for over 1,000 years. Xian could only control his anger for a few seconds after encountering Mo Ru. Barely enough time to utter these words. After Xiu Mai's death, Xian spent 200 years venting his anger on the Celestial Army and the Celestial Emperor's allies. Once his anger was slightly relieved, enough for him to think clearly, he spent another 100 years trying to find the culprit who killed Xiu Mai. Unfortunately, he had slaughtered all of the soldiers Mo Ru had sent to distract him, so there was nobody left alive besides the Celestial Emperor, who could identify Mo Ru as the killer. Yet, the Shadow Army, whose power and influence had been growing over the course of 3 centuries, somehow unearthed the truth that the Supreme General, Mo Ru, bore responsibility for the death of Xiu Mai. When Dongyi learned of this information, he immediately sought out Xian to relay this information. Of course, since Xian was always on the move and sometimes hiding in seclusion, it took some time even for the Shadow Army to find him. In fact, if the Shadow Army had been even slightly less competent, they would have suffered the same fate as Mo Ru and the Celestial Army. One could even say that without Dongyi, who had spent hundreds of years by Xia's side as his right-hand man, they would have never found Xian. When Dongyi found Xian and revealed the information about Xiu Mai's killer to him, Xian's somewhat subdued anger spewed out like a volcano during an eruption after decades of slumber. However, Xian was still too weak at that time to defeat Mo Ru, so he focused on training and improving his cultivation. He slaughtered the Celestial Emperor's allies as training and plundered their wealth, using it to further increase his own prowess. This went on for hundreds of years until Xian was confident that he could toy with Mo Ru. The first thing Xian did was seek out Dongyi for the Shadow Army's assistance, helping him find Mo Ru. You took the words right out of my mouth, evil god. Do you have any idea how much I have suffered because of you? I was made a fool in front of those around me, and even the Celestial Emperor tossed me aside. How dare you make me suffer such humiliation? Mo Ru shouted like a crazy old man as he pointed at Xian with 2 fingers. Suffer? You call that bullshit suffering? Xian muttered in a cold voice, his gaze sharp enough to pierce even steel. He pointed his sword at Mo Gu and continued. For killing my wife, I shall teach you the true meaning of suffering. Ha. You mean that pregnant bitch? You should have heard the way she screamed when I sliced open her stomach and showed her the baby. I have never heard anything as thrilling. Mo Ru laughed like a madman. Hearing such words, Xian released a beastly roar that sounded like a dragon. His body began emitting a golden glow until it engulfed his entire body like flames. Mo Ru immediately stopped laughing, even choking on his own saliva after seeing the tremendous change in the atmosphere. Xian waved his black and red sword viciously, instantly splitting the heaven and earth before him in half. Seeing this, not even Mo Ru, who was at 3rd level God Ascension, dared to confront such a powerful attack head-on, so he quickly dodged it. Where the fuck is this bastard pulling out so much power from? Mo Ru cried inwardly when he sensed the violent and overwhelming spiritual energy contained within Xian's normal sword swing without any techniques. Xian was only at the 2nd level God Ascension, yet he displayed prowess that surpassed even the strongest cultivator in the world who was at 5th level God Ascension, the Celestial Emperor himself. Moreover, the golden aura that covered Xian's body made every single cell within Mo Ru scream in terror, almost as though they instinctively knew how dangerous it was. After unleashing his first strike, Xian immediately swung his sword again before even confirming that his first one had struck or missed Mo Ru, as if he already knew. Mo Ru hastily dodged the incoming attacks and started retaliating, throwing powerful martial techniques that could easily erase tens of thousands of miles of divine heaven if it landed. However, Xian used his black sword to effortlessly cut down any technique that was thrown in his direction. What? How is he cutting my immortal chi like it's ordinary spiritual energy? Ru felt his world turning upside down after witnessing something incomprehensible. I refuse to believe you'll also cut down my celestial chi. Ru shouted before exuding a divine and godly presence. When the animals, spiritual beasts, and even insects within 100,000-mile radius sensed Ru's celestial chi, they all instinctively lowered their bodies and bowed toward his direction. After attaining immortality, cultivators gain mastery over immortal chi, a force that can overpower any non-immortal. However, upon reaching the God Ascension realm, they ascend to a level where they can sense and wield celestial chi, a power that eclipses even immortal chi. Xian released a disdainful snort as he countered Ru's celestial chi with his own. The clash between their energies resulted in a colossal crater spanning 20,000 miles around them. Naturally, everything within the crater had been completely erased from existence. The potency of celestial chi was such that even a true immortal would perish if struck by it. However, due to the immense energy required to wield celestial chi, it could only be utilized sparingly. After just using celestial chi once, Ru was already soaked in sweat and panting heavily, something that typically never happens to those who reach the God Ascension realm. Yet, Xian remained unfazed, his breathing calm and steady. Ru's countenance darkened as he realized the vast disparity between their prowess, prompting him to contemplate possible avenues of escape from his dire predicament. Xian, who had been on the battlefield for most of his life, acquired the ability to tell when his enemy had given up and wanted to escape at a glance, so he could read Ru like an open book at this moment. Ha 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 ha. Xian suddenly started laughing in an eerie manner, his voice sending chills down Ru's entire being. We've barely just fought and you're already thinking about escaping? I understand why the Celestial Emperor sent someone like you to assassinate a helpless mother now. Turns out you're one cowardly son of a bitch. Ru's face flushed red with anger after hearing Xian's insult. Yet he didn't utter anything back, merely staring daggers at him. Xian suddenly stopped laughing and continued with a truly grim expression on his face. Let's see if you'll still dare to leave after seeing this. Dongyi, he shouted. Dongyi appeared next to Xian the very next moment, but he was not alone, as he had a woman within his grasp, her presence clearly against her will. When Ru saw the face of this woman being held captive by Dongyi, his face twisted in shock and anger, almost as if he had eaten a group of live flies by accident. Chapter 1435 Unhinged 18+. Chapter 1435 Unhinged 18+. 1435 Unhinged 18+. Reader's discretion is advised. Mature content ahead. _______. You can escape if you want, but you'll have to leave behind this helpless woman. Xian spoke in a nonchalant voice as he calmly gazed at Ru, who was trembling so violently one might mistake it as an ongoing seizure. Evil God, you son of a bitch. I swear to God if you hurt even a single hair on her body, I will. Ru roared at the top of his lungs, causing the entire world to shudder. However, he was quickly interrupted by Xian, who reached for the silky hair on the woman's head with his hand, grabbing a handful of it before viciously ripping it directly out of her scalp, tearing away a chunk of skin on her head, and causing it to gush with blood. Ah! The beautiful woman in Dongyi's grasp screamed in pain and squirmed like a fish out of water. Dongmei! Ru cried out loud as he subconsciously flew at her, but he was quickly stopped by Dongyi, who casually pressed his sword on the woman's throat, threatening to cut it if Ru got any closer. Seeing this, Ru could only halt his movements and hover in the air with a helpless look on his face, not daring to move a single muscle in fear for the woman's life. How? Why is Dongmei in their hands? She should be protected by. Ru suddenly recalled that he had been removed from the position of Supreme General, so it was only natural for the Celestial Emperor to stop all support for him and his family. A moment later, Xian moved closer to Dongmei, who was shaking non-stop with tears constantly flowing down her face. Despite being a powerful golden immortal cultivator, She was akin to a mortal before Dong Yi, who was a true immortal. Please let me go. I will do anything you want, she pleaded. Xian lifted his hand and gently caressed her soft cheeks, causing her to shake even more violently. Don't you dare touch her with your filthy hands, evil god. Mo Ru released an enraged shout, but he didn't move a muscle. Xian halted his movement and shifted his gaze from the terrified woman to Mo Ru. How long have you known each other? He suddenly asked. Why the hell are you asking such a question? Ah. Mo Dongmei started screaming again when Xian suddenly swung his sword, slicing off a piece of her face that had just caressed, creating a hole in her right cheek. Dongmei. Mo Ru clenched his fists to resist the urge to pounce on Xian, squeezing so hard it bled. How long have you known each other? Xian calmly repeated the same words he just uttered without the slightest change to his expression, clearly unfazed by his actions. 180,000 years. We have known each other for 180,000 years. Mo Ru could only respond to his question, fearing what refusing might do. 180,000 years, huh? I wonder how it would feel to lose someone you've loved for so long. I suffered unfathomable pain when I lost my wife, and we haven't known each other for even a small fraction of your time together, so I cannot imagine. Would you be kind enough to share your experience with me later, Supreme General? Xian asked as he stared into Mo Ru's eyes. Don't you dare, evil god. Please, I will do anything you want. Just spare her. Mo Ru's will to fight had completely dissipated, leaving behind only a profound sense of despair and powerlessness, emotions he had never before experienced in such intensity. Yet Xian remained unhinged, and as if to reflect his existence, the golden aura slowly turned black and red. You will do anything I want. Then I'd like you to bring my wife, Xiaomei, and our child back from the dead, Xian requested. That's impossible. Not even the Celestial Emperor can bring back the dead, Mo Ru exclaimed. Ah. In response to Mo Ru's response, Xian grabbed two of Dongmei's fingers and yanked them, tearing them right off her left hand, bones and all. You claimed you'd do anything, but you immediately proved to be a liar. Xian sighed, shaking his head in a dejected manner. This unhinged son of a bitch. He'll definitely kill her at this rate. Mo Ru gritted his teeth. Xian suddenly narrowed his gaze and yanked 3 more fingers off Dongmei. What was that for? Mo Ru exclaimed. I didn't like the way you were looking at me just now, he calmly responded. What? Mo Ru was speechless. However, despite her seemingly fatal injuries, Mo Dongmei was far from death's grasp, thanks to her high cultivation, which continuously regenerated her body. Xian stopped paying attention to Mo Ru and turned to look at Mo Dongmei, who immediately looked down when she sensed his gaze on her. Hey woman, look at me. Xian called out to her, but she continued staring at the ground. Seeing this, Xian grabbed her by the chin and forced her to stare at his face. Then with his other hand he gouged her eyes right out of their sockets. Ah! My eyes! Mo Dongmei shrieked like a ghost. Xian ignored the screaming right beside his ear and looked at the 2 eyeballs in his bloodied grasp, muttering, If you're not going to use them, I might as well take them from you. Evil god! What do you want from us? Mo Ru could no longer endure it and roared. If you're going to torture someone, torture me instead. I was the one who killed your wife, not Dongmei. She has nothing to do with this. Xian shifted his gaze back to Mo Ru and surprisingly chuckled. Nothing to do with this? My wife, Xiaomei, also had nothing to do with my fight with the Celestial Emperor. Yet you targeted her just because she was my wife. With a swift movement, Xian clenched his grasp and destroyed the eyeballs, creating a weird sound. As for torturing you, don't worry, you'll definitely get your turn later. After saying such words, he returned to looking at Mo Dongmei, who was still screaming hysterically, almost as if she'd gone insane. Chapter 1436 An Eye for an Eye, 18+. Chapter 1436 An Eye for an Eye, 18+. 1436 An Eye for an Eye, 18 plus. Reader's discretion is advised. Mature content ahead. Underscore. Your husband killed my wife, so I will kill you in return. An eye for an eye. Do you blame me? Tian Xian suddenly asked Mo Dongmei, who lost control over her body, causing it to release its impurities in the form of piss and poop. Ugh, how dirty. You nearly dirted my clothes too. Dong Yi shook his head in an awfully calm manner despite what they were doing to this helpless woman. Evil God. Stop. I will help you fight the Celestial Emperor, if you spare her. You can even kill me afterward if you want. Emoru suddenly shouted. The Celestial Emperor? As if I need your help to get rid of him. Tian Xian sneered. Then what the fuck do you want from me? Emoru cried out loud. I thought I'd already made it crystal clear at the very beginning that I am going to let you experience true suffering. Tian Xian muttered in a grim voice. He then moved his arm, using his sword to perfectly skin Mo Dongmei, like one would skin an animal's hide. Seeing this, Emoru could no longer endure it and pounced forth. If they were going to kill Mo Dongmei regardless if he attacked them or not, he might as well take his chances. However, all it took for Tian Xian to stop Emoru was a single blast of celestial qi. When he was struck by the celestial qi, Emoru was sent hurtling into the crater, landing at the very bottom. Now let us continue. Tian Xian immediately returned to torturing Mo Dongmei. As Emoru lay at the bottom of the crater with a broken body, unable to lift even a finger, his cultivation allowed him to witness every moment of Tian Xian torturing his wife, as if he were right in front of them. After skinning Mo Dongmei like an animal, Tian Xian proceeded to butcher her like a cow, removing chunk after chunk of her flesh until only her skeleton remained. However, surprisingly, Mo Dongmei remained alive despite missing most of her body and even her heart. Once a cultivator achieves golden immortal, they gain the ability to survive even if their entire body and heart are crushed as long as their soul remains unharmed. Mo Dongmei could have separated her soul from her body and escaped that way, but Dong Yi had sealed her soul within her body, making it impossible for her to escape. Sometime later, Tian Xian crushed Mo Dongmei's skeleton until it was fine powder, and mixed it with her butchered flesh before forcefully feeding it to Emoru, who had been silently recovering his body as he watched everything. As for Mo Dongmei's soul, Tian Xian shattered it with his celestial qi right before Emoru, killing her without giving her a chance at reincarnation. Why, you monster! You are not human. You are the incarnation of evil itself. Emoru brawled his eyes out as he was forced to savor the flavor of his beloved wife, literally. Perhaps that may be true, but it was you who brought out the evil within me. Tian Xian said in a low voice. Sometime later, Goru shouted, Well, what are you waiting for? Are you going to kill me now or what? Tian Xian didn't respond and silently stared at him while surrounded by an ominous aura. After a moment of silence, he spoke in a chilling voice. Do you seriously think it would be over so quickly? What do you mean? Emoru muttered in a dazed voice. What Tian Xian said the following moment left Emoru absolutely speechless and horrified. In case you forgot, it wasn't just my wife who died at your hands. My child, our daughter was also slaughtered by you. Tian Xian reminded him of his crimes. Why, you don't mean? Emoru didn't even dare to completely decipher the meaning behind Tian Xian's ominous words, leaving his mind blank. Dong Yi. Tian Xian called for him. Yes, my liege. Dong Yi bowed to him before disappearing for a moment. After a few seconds of eerie silence, Dong Yi returned to Tian Xian's side with another individual within his grasp. This figure was much smaller than Mo Dongmei, and he was also much weaker, being only a divine warrior. Father? Is that you? Please, help me. These bastards captured mother and everybody in our family. The young man immediately started shouting when he saw his father's face, even feeling relieved. And no. Emoru had a look on his face so twisted and horrifying that it could scare even ghosts to death. Please, evil, Tian Xian. Anything but this. Anything but my children. Emoru pleaded in a desperate voice. However, Tian Xian ignored Emoru and used his sword to cripple the young man's cultivation. He then turned to look at Dong Yi and spoke, "Bring the rest here." "As you command, my liege." Dong Yi left for a few moments again before returning with another individual. He repeated this until over a dozen individuals knelt before Xian, their cultivations crippled. "Why? I only killed one of your children," Mo asked with blood flowing down his eyes, nostrils, and lips. "You didn't just kill one of my children. You killed my one and only child and my wife, so you killed all of my children, including the ones we would have had in the future." As Xian spoke, he removed the limbs of his first victim, replicating the injuries Xiu may had suffered. He repeated the same actions on the second victim, then the third, until he reached his seventh victim, who was a young woman with a somewhat round stomach. "This must be fate. You'll get to see your grandchild before they are even born." Without hesitation, Xian split the woman's stomach in half, revealing the baby inside to Mo, who could only lay there and stare at the gruesome scene with a blank expression on his face. Then, without stopping, Xian continued to torture the rest of Mo's children. Chilling screams that could freeze even hell itself filled the crater for many minutes, until it suddenly became dead silent. After a long moment of silence, a blood-curdling and inhuman scream that sounded worse than a pig being slaughtered echoed throughout the crater. Tian Ziyan. Chapter 1437 Evil Gods Atrocities. Chapter 1437 Evil Gods Atrocities. 1437 Evil Gods Atrocities. After Xian finished slaughtering Mo's entire family before his very eyes, Xian took a seat on top of the pile of corpses and calmly gazed at Mo, who had an inhuman expression on his face. "To the heavens! They will not forgive you for your heinous crimes today," Mo cried as he stared back at Xian. If glares could kill people, Mo's stares had the potential to slay even gods. "Perhaps, but I do not seek forgiveness for my actions today. I only ask for understanding," Xian muttered as he lifted his gaze to stare at the red sky that seemed to be growing darker with every moment. He then looked at his bloodied hands and sighed. "Even after all this, my anger is not fully satiated. Maybe it will never be satisfied, not even after I slay the Celestial Emperor." He returned to looking at Mo and continued, "All you had to do was leave my wife alone, but alas, even if I had refused to do the Celestial Emperor's deed, he would have simply found somebody else to kill her. You should have never offended the Celestial Emperor. This is all your fault." Mo roared. "Indeed, I am partially at fault for Xiu Mai's death, but not because I offended the Celestial Emperor." Xian sighed with a self-loathing expression. "I promised to protect her with my life, but I was too weak to even do that, so she perished. I have no excuses." He suddenly stood up and pointed his sword at Mo and continued, "I don't care how long it'll take. I will find her again after her reincarnation. Even if she doesn't remember me, I will protect her properly this time." "Reincarnation? Ha! You've truly gone insane," Mo sneered. Xian narrowed his eyes and muttered, "Don't worry, you won't even get the chance to experience reincarnation." His sword suddenly gushed with immense enhanced sword aura, decapitating Mo. However, since Mo was essentially a god, he would survive even if his entire body was crushed. Xian naturally knew of this, so he immediately captured Mo's soul and sealed it within the black sword in his grasp. Upon reaching God Ascension, a cultivator's soul undergoes a profound change, making it challenging for even another God Ascension cultivator to destroy it. "I don't have the strength to shatter your soul right now, so I will keep you in here until I do." Xian tossed the black sword into his storage ring and silently stood there. Meanwhile, the sky above Xian had become so dark it looked as though it had been burned black. "My liege." Dong Yi appeared beside him with a worried face. "Go." Xian responded with a single word. "Yes." Dong Yi immediately disappeared from the scene. Once he was alone, Xian glanced at the cruelty he had done, and suddenly fell to his knees. Ugh! He proceeded to vomit violently, even crying rivers of tears as he emptied his stomach. His sweat-soaked body trembled non-stop, sending chills throughout his entire being. "Aha! He released a beastly cry a few moments later. Xian, who had spent decades in resolve and had not felt anything during the process, was suddenly overwhelmed by an immense wave of guilt and disgust over what he had done to Mo's family. She definitely wouldn't have approved of my methods, even hate me for what I've done. He muttered in a low voice. Unfortunately, this is the only way for me to remain somewhat sane. The only reason for me to remain in his shitty world without you. Xian stood up a moment later and lifted his head to stare at the massive black clouds rumbling above him. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get this over with. In response to Xian's words, the black clouds suddenly unleashed unfathomably powerful lightning strikes upon him. Hundreds of thick lightning strikes, each powerful enough to cause the world to tremble, smitten Xian's small figure, as if the heavens wanted to erase his existence. Yet these lightning strikes were unable to penetrate Xian's body, shielded by a black aura, let alone harm him. The heavenly tribulation lasted for several days without any pauses. Once the black clouds dissipated from the sky, Xian emerged from the burned crater, without a single injury on his body. However, he was no longer alone, as tens of thousands of powerful immortals surrounded him in every direction. Evil God, you will pay for the atrocities you have committed today. Xian swept the crowd with a cold yet calm gaze. After identifying them as the Celestial Army, the suppressed bloodlust within Xian began oozing out once again. Even if I have to fight against the entire world, even if I have to split heaven and earth in half, I will destroy anything and anyone that dares to block my path to the Celestial Emperor. Xian continued his relentless campaign to slaughter the Celestial Emperor, leaving a trail of bloodshed and death across the divine heaven, with mountains of corpses marking his path. Brother Yuan, are you okay? Xiao Hua's worried voice suddenly resounded. Yuan slowly opened his eyes and found himself kneeling on the ground with tears flowing down both sides of his face. Huh? What happened to me? He muttered in a dazed voice, unaware that Xian's memories had overwhelmed his consciousness. When he regained his clarity, Yuan recalled Xian's memories and the atrocities had committed again, causing him to vomit violently. Brother Yuan. Xiao Hua called out to him again. He hurriedly raised his hand and said, I am fine. I just remembered something unpleasant, that's all. Once head calmed down, Yuan stood up and left the basement, returning to the house. Before he left, Yuan took the time to clean the entire building, removing all dust and dirt, fixing the broken door, and even cleansing the bloodstains in Xiu Mai's room. Chapter 1438 Unique Quest. Chapter 1438 Unique Quest 1438 Unique Quest. After cleaning up the building to the best of his abilities, Yuan left the place and returned to the dark and ominous world outside. He turned to look at Invincible Heaven for a moment and said, the city of Xian has been split into many pieces, but we can use it to determine our location within the Shadow Realm. The Invincible Heaven was built in the city's center, but it was pushed further east when we expanded the city, so we're near the eastern side of the Shadow Realm. Yuan closed his eyes and recalled the first city he encountered when he entered the Shadow Realm before. That part of the city was toward the western gate, so we'll have to travel west if we want to have a higher chance of encountering those two God Ascension Realm souls. Now that he had a sense of direction, Yuan no longer hesitated and started flying toward the west. As he reached the end of the city and neared the banished souls, Yuan heard a familiar noise and shifted his gaze to look at the notification. Yuan suddenly felt his body getting lighter, as if an invisible boulder had been lifted from his shoulders. Celestial shackles? What is that? Yuan raised an eyebrow at this notification, as had never seen anything like this before. However, it implied that he had been restricted by something, which had been unsealed when he fully regained the evil god's memories. With that said, while he's fully regained Xian's memories, he has yet to fully regain Tianyang's memories, even though Xian already did. As Yuan pondered about the implications of this unsealing, more notifications appeared. Quest. Difficulty, impossible. Quest description. Complete the following trials to acquire the approval of Heaven's supremacy. 1. Defeat a cultivator who is at least 9 realms above you without using Heaven's supremacy, 2. Defeat a magical beast that is at least 9 realms above you without using heaven's supremacy. 3. Break your mortal shackles and become a true immortal. 4. Defeat 100 million enemies. 5. Attain an unbreakable will. Yuan's eyes widened with shock upon seeing the requirements for the trials. Even a top cultivation genius seen only once every 1,000 years would have trouble defeating an opponent who is an entire realm stronger. Yet he had to defeat someone 9 entire realms stronger than himself. The second trial that required him to defeat a magical beast 9 realms above his own was even more difficult, as magical beasts are naturally stronger than human cultivators. As for the third and most time-consuming trial, he had to evolve his physique before he could even break through Spirit King. And even if his cultivation resumed its progress, it could take decades for him to reach true immortal. The fourth trial simply required him to defeat opponents, but the number needed was massive, to say the least. The fifth and last trial was too vague to gauge its difficulty. Heavens! Do I have to fulfill all of these ridiculous requirements before I can use heaven's supremacy? He cried inwardly. While heaven's supremacy was undeniably and incredibly powerful, even unrivaled, technique, the prerequisites to employ it were simply staggering. How did I even manage to use heaven's supremacy before I fulfilled these requirements? Anyway, did it deliberately give me a brief taste of its peerless prowess, just to mess with me like this? He sighed. However, while these trials may seem outrageous at first glance, perhaps even impossible in the eyes of most if not everyone besides Yuan, he did not immediately give up and only found it difficult even with his advantages. After regaining the evil god's memories, Yuan's soul and demeanor underwent a profound transformation. Yet, even with his vast and unfathomable experience, Yuan desperately clenched onto his own personality and character. Naturally, since had only lived for barely 2 decades in comparison to Xian, who had tens of thousands of years of experience, not to mention Tianyang and the other incarnations, Yuan's own experience was insignificant, akin to that of a single grain of sand in a vast desert. This made it incredibly difficult if not outright impossible for Yuan to remain unchanged, but he still managed to hold on to his core values and identity. As Yuan stood at the edge of the city, he silently gazed toward the direction of his destination with an ominous feeling in his guts. If I flew toward the western region directly, I would have to pass the central region, where some of the most dangerous and powerful banished souls exist. The Shadow Realm existed even before the evil god's birth, and Xian himself had traversed the world several times during his life. However, while there were not as many banished souls as in the current era, most of the expert souls resided near the center of the Shadow Realm, as it contained more spiritual energy, allowing them to preserve their souls and sanity a little better. Moreover, since there was only so much space in the central region, the weaker souls were forced to live elsewhere, where their souls deteriorated much quicker. In my current state, I'd be simply marching toward my grave if I approached the central region, so I need to circle around it. Since he was closer to the northern region than the southern region, Yuan eventually approached the northern region of the Shadow Realm. When Yuan entered the banished soul's territory, despite not exuding his soul strength, none of the souls there approached him, almost as though they were afraid of him. Yuan observed this change and wondered if it had anything to do with his strengthened soul, which was naturally exuding the aura of an ancient expert that could only be detected by the banished souls. However, he didn't complain and soared toward the next city with extreme speed. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1439 A Familiar Notification. Chapter 1439 A Familiar Notification. 1439 A familiar notification. Somewhere in the primordial realm, a dignified middle-aged man of imposing presence sat poised upon the surface of a large pond while emanating an ancient aura, seemingly asleep. Suddenly, a ripple appeared on the tranquil surface of the pond, followed by a calm yet excited voice. "Father, the blood jade has finally activated." The middle-aged man's eyes, which had remained closed for countless years, abruptly snapped open, revealing his beautiful yet ominous red eyes. He stood up without creating another ripple on the pond, and turned to look at the tall figure standing at the edge of the pond. Prepare for his arrival, he spoke in a nonchalant tone. The tall figure, a beautiful woman with long black hair and similar crimson eyes, nodded before disappearing into thin air. Once he was alone again, the middle-aged man lifted his head to gaze at the dark sky and smiled. At last, you have returned to us. A few more moments later, the middle-aged man also disappeared into thin air. Sometime later, several tens of thousands of miles away, a man wore a fearful expression on his face after he realized the middle-aged man had left the pond. The Azura clan is on the move again. What? The Azura clan? They've been silent for so many years now, though. Warn everybody. If we disturb them even slightly, there'll be another bloodbath within the primordial realm. Rumors of the Azura clan's sudden activity spread swiftly across the primordial realm, igniting speculation and intrigue like wildfire. Moreover, even though it was only a rumor, nobody questioned its legitimacy or dared to confirm it. The Azura clan? Fuck. Why does it have to happen when the next selection is about to begin? What if they're planning on participating this year? Ha ha ha. Even if they want to participate, I doubt the heavens would allow them to. Whatever, it doesn't matter what they're trying to do. I'm going into seclusion until the selection begins. Regardless of their status or cultivation, most exiles within the primordial realm entered seclusion shortly after the rumor spread, turning the usually rowdy and chaotic place eerily quiet and peaceful. Meanwhile, in the Shadow Realm, Yuan silently pondered about Xian's memories, mostly his connection with the Azura clan, where Xiaohua claimed to originate from. His first encounter with the Azura clan was anything but friendly. In fact, they faced each other as adversaries since the Azura clan aligned with the Celestial Emperor's forces. Yet this didn't imply an alliance, as many were coerced into supporting the Celestial Emperor under threat of resource restriction, if not straight annihilation. The Azura clan was a powerful but small family that has existed since Tianyang's time, but didn't start gaining influence until much later. Their family consisted of less than 100 members. Despite that, they were known as one of the most powerful backgrounds in the divine heaven, surpassing even the 9 immortal clans. Just like Xian, the Celestial Emperor coveted their talents and approached them. Unfortunately for the Azura clan, they were approached way before the heavenly war of immortals and gods even began, so they had to bear the full pressure of the Celestial Emperor's prowess. As powerful as the Azura clan may be, they could not defy the Celestial Emperor and his massive forces, so they ended up surrendering before joining his forces. While their encounter with the Celestial Emperor was unfortunate, the same could not be said about their encounter with Tian. Since they encountered Tian long after Head dealt with Mo Ru and regained his composure, they were not immediately annihilated without any chance of survival. Tian, after gaining enough strength and shattering Mo Ru's soul, started working together with Heaven's Defiance, and recruited those who were forced to submit to the Celestial Emperor into their own forces. The Azura clan was one of these people Head released from the Celestial Emperor's shackles. Upon regaining their freedom, the Azura clan swore their loyalty to Tian, and started their own campaign against the Celestial Emperor, slaughtering everyone who willingly worked with him. The pent-up bloodlust of the Azura clan amassed over thousands of years erupted like a volcanic explosion, shocking the entire divine heaven, and leaving everyone terrified of their presence. Their allies included Xiaohua. What's the Azura clan planning? Why did they seal that little princess within Xiaohua? Yuan pondered inwardly. Since most of Tian's memories were related to fighting and hunting down the Celestial Emperor's forces, there wasn't much information on other matters. However, Yuan instinctively knew that he had to meet the Azura clan soon. I could either patiently collect the ancient seals and secretly enter the primordial realm, or forcefully open it. Regardless of my decision, it will cause a commotion within the 9 heavens and alert the current Celestial Emperor of my presence. Due to Tian's memories, Yuan no longer had to rely on the ancient seals to enter the primordial realm. However, such methods would essentially announce his presence to the entire world. In the end, Yuan stopped worrying about something that might not happen for a while, and focused on his current problem, Earth's calamity. After traveling for almost 2 weeks straight, Yuan finally arrived at his destination, returning to the city had explored during his first visit to the Shadow Realm. The first thing he did when he entered the city was approach the giant dragon statue. Omicron M as Yuan hovered before the dragon statue. He activated Dragon's Gaze to see if he could activate the statue again. However, there was no response. Sometime later, he scanned the city with Dragon's Gaze and sure enough, he could still see some buildings glowing, indicating that there was a Great One's trial there. After pondering for a moment, he flew toward the building that had the brightest glow and entered it. Inside the building was a small dragon statue. Shortly after he entered the building, a familiar notification appeared before Yuan. Chapter 1440 The Great One's Proposal. Chapter 1440 The Great One's Proposal. 1440 The Great One's Proposal. Yuan suddenly found himself standing in the middle of a long bridge while surrounded by golden clouds, and a familiar-looking entity with red skin and a bloodthirsty aura stood on the other side of the bridge. A demon, huh? In the presence of a demon, most would quiver with fear, but Yuan calmly gazed at it like it was akin to an ant in his eyes. This demon had the cultivation of spirit enlightenment, but in terms of prowess, it would rival even a divine warrior. Yuan shifted his head and gazed to look behind him at the red line drawn on the bridge. 059, 058, 057. A whole minute to prepare? How generous! Yuan mumbled as he took a seat right behind the red line. Once the timer reached 0, the demon started walking toward the red line in small and slow steps. Yet, Yuan didn't do anything and calmly watched as the demon slowly approached him. Seeing this, the demon bore a perplexed expression, baffled by Yuan's lack of resistance or opposition, almost as though he had no intention of stopping it. It took almost 90 seconds, but the demon finally stood before the red line. As the demon raised its leg to take the final step, Yuan calmly muttered, "Swords of eternal torment." The demon suddenly found itself unable to control even a single muscle within its body, much less finish the final step, almost as though its figure was completely frozen in time. 1:31, 10:31. 1 hour 59 minutes and 31 seconds. 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye, yet the demon remained frozen with its leg halfway in the air. 4 hours, 10 hours, 50 hours. Once the timer reached 72 hours, the demon suddenly shattered into countless fragments like glass, followed by a notification. Yuan already knew that he wouldn't receive any reward for completing the Great One's trial, but he still wanted to see if there would be any difference. It was a lot easier than I'd anticipated. Yuan muttered to himself as he left the scene. However, as he reached the exit, he sensed a profound gaze staring at him. He immediately turned around. "You are." Yuan was slightly surprised by the sudden appearance of an eye that hovered at the corner of the room. "Oh, you can see me?" The eye spoke in a slightly surprised tone. "You must be the Great One." Yuan quickly identified the identity of this golden eye. The Great One narrowed his eyes slightly and remained silent for a few moments. "It hasn't been that long since our last encounter, yet your progress has been monstrous, for lack of a better term," the Great One remarked. The Great One had already recognized Yuan's potential from their first meeting, but he never could have imagined that he had underestimated Yuan's talent to such an extent. "Ha ha ha." The Great One suddenly started laughing. "Yuan, correct? Why did you challenge the trial even though you wouldn't receive anything?" "I just felt like it." Yuan casually shrugged. "Interesting. Then allow me to ask you another question. Why have you returned to the Shadow Realm? If you're seeking treasure, I'm afraid you won't find anything besides the ones within the treasure room." "I'm not here for treasures." Yuan shook his head and did not further explain his situation. The Great One stared directly into Yuan's eyes, almost as though he wanted to read Yuan's memories like the last time. However, he quickly realized that he was unable to see anything and swiftly gave up. "I have never met anyone half as talented as you." The Great One sighed. "Thank you." After a moment of silence, the Great One spoke in a serious voice. "It's been countless years since I last met someone with even half your potential. It would be a waste to ignore such talents, so I have a proposal. How about becoming my disciple?" "Excuse me? You want to accept me as your disciple?" Yuan didn't dare to believe his ears. Indeed. If you become my disciple, I will help you reach the God Ascension realm within 1,000 years. Yuan raised his eyebrows and asked, "What about your legacy? What about it? Would it still count if I met you in such a manner?" Haha. The Great One started laughing again. The treasures I'll give to my own disciple will naturally be much better than the legacy's reward. Something I created out of boredom. To tell you the truth, the legacy's rewards are mostly just random trash I've picked up throughout the years. Of course, even trash that I pick up is better than what the top families in the 9 heaven could provide. Yuan was left speechless by this revelation. The notion that the creation of the Great One's legacy stemmed from mere boredom caught him entirely off guard. "You look disappointed. Is it due to the rewards or something else?" the Great One inquired. "A little bit of both, I guess. As ID said, even though the treasures for the legacy are worthless to me, they are still extremely valuable to others, especially humans. I can randomly pick a treasure from the pile, and it would be valuable enough to start a war. Of course, you wouldn't have to worry about that if you became my disciple, as you'll have access to the most powerful techniques and valuable treasures in the 9 heavens. This is a once-in-lifetime offer. Even immortals and gods would not hesitate to become my servant, much less a disciple." The Great One became silent and patiently awaited Yuan's response. Chapter 1441 A little early. Chapter 1441 A little early 1441 A little early Yuan stared at the Great One's overbearing eyes and spoke after a moment of silence. "You're actually serious about recruiting me as your disciple?" "Of course. I wouldn't joke about something like this." "What makes you think I am joking?" the Great One asked. "I thought most beings of your stature typically avoided such things, especially since you're a divine beast. Since divine beasts and humans have different cultivation methods, it wouldn't make sense for a divine beast to teach a human in cultivation. Another reason would be their lack of human cultivation techniques and resources. However, the Great One was an entity that stood at the very top of the cultivation world with unimaginable wealth and resources, so such problems weren't an issue for him. If it were a few million years ago, I would have simply laughed at such an idea, but times have changed. Divine beasts and humans are no longer isolated in their own world. And the world itself is evolving in ways even I cannot fathom. In fact, you won't be my first disciple, or even second but the third." Yuan smiled and said, "It's a very enticing proposal, especially since it's coming from an entity such as the Great One. Unfortunately, I will have to decline." The Great One narrowed his eyes, his gaze seemingly filled with disappointment. "Why?" he asked. This marked his first experience of being rejected in such a matter. He wasn't exaggerating when he claimed that even immortals and gods would be willing to become his disciples, due to his unfathomable wealth and unshakable position within the 9 heavens. "Honestly, there's no particular reason besides the fact that I don't like taking the easy route. While I may be able to progress much faster if I were to become your disciple, it doesn't necessarily mean I'll become stronger than if I were to take my own path. You think that by becoming my disciple, you'll be taking the easy route?" I didn't anticipate being underestimated in such a manner, and by a human, at that. "I am not underestimating you, but I'll definitely have an easier life if I ignore everything else in my life to become your disciple, as there are some things that could only be experienced and gained in the wild cultivation world." Of course, Yuan had other reasons for not becoming the Great One's disciple, but he didn't need to reveal such information. The Great One fell silent, his thoughts unknown. Sometime later he spoke. "Since you have already refused, I have no reason to persist, nor would I go out of my way to beg someone to become my disciple. Good luck finding me in this vast universe." The Great One disappeared the following moment without uttering another word. Yuan didn't think too much of it and left the building. After preparing himself, Yuan left the city and made his way toward the direction of the treasure room. Sometime later, he halted his movements when he arrived at his destination. After looking around and taking a deep breath, he shouted in a loud voice that was amplified by his spiritual energy, "Immortal Fairy Yu Ning and Sect Master Ji Ran, are you here?" I, Yuan, have returned to fulfill my promise. Yuan's voice echoed for hundreds of miles in every direction. A few minutes passed without any responses, but he didn't panic and closed his eyes to wait while thousands of banished souls that had been alerted by his voice circled him like a school of fish without daring to get too close. A few more moments later, Yuan's eyes snapped open as he sensed a powerful presence approaching his location. Scram! A cold voice boomed, causing the banished souls around Yuan to scatter like startled pigeons. Yuan turned to look at the feminine shadowy figure before him and smiled, but before he could say anything, he sensed another powerful presence approaching them. Yuan waited for the second presence to arrive before speaking. It's been a while. I hadn't anticipated you would return so soon, said Yu Ning, the immortal fairy, her voice filled with surprise. Xian then spoke. While I am glad to see you again so soon, it appears to be a little too early for your return, Yuan. You're only a peak spirit king. I recall telling you to come back only after you've reached the cultivation of Spirit Emperor. You were too hasty to return. Yu Ning recalled with a slightly dispirited tone after realizing that he was only a spirit king. Yuan nodded. I am well aware that I was only supposed to return after reaching Spirit Emperor, but rest assured, I have more than enough soul strength to get the both of you out of this gloomy place. Really? The two immortals exchanged glances with each other, seemingly in disbelief. I wouldn't joke about something like this. I promise, he reassured them. Now then, how does one go about housing souls in a soul weapon? Xian then said. First, we'll need a soul weapon that isn't already occupied by another soul or spirit. Then one of us will attempt to enter it. The soul weapons master will be able to sense any intruders and reject them, but it'll be fine if you don't do anything and allow us to dwell within the soul weapon. Will there be any side effects from my soul weapons? Yuan asked. No, there won't be any since we're only using it as a temporary home, until we can recreate our physical bodies. Yuan nodded and retrieved the starry abyss, his first soul weapon, and asked, Who wants to be first? Me. They both responded simultaneously. Xian, I've been in the shadow realm for much longer than you, so it should only be natural for me to leave first. Also ladies first, Yu Ning said to him the very next moment. That's bullshit. Xian immediately sneered. Seeing this, Yuan shook his head and said, Relax, you two. Did you forget that I have two soul weapons? Chapter 1442 Xian. Chapter 1442 Xian 1442 Xian. We know that you have two soul weapons, but to be completely honest with you, we're not confident that you have enough soul strength to house both of our souls at your current level, so you cannot blame us for wanting to go first. Xian said in a sighing voice. He's right, Yuan. You also can't blame us for being skeptical of your capabilities. Yu Ning agreed with Xian, and she continued. If you don't have enough soul strength, it would be incredibly dangerous for us to occupy your soul weapon, so it's not as if we have no risk. Normally, we wouldn't trust a spirit king to be capable enough to help even a single one of us, much less both of us at once, but we're just that desperate to get out of this hellhole. Yuan nodded. I understand your hesitation, so allow me to get rid of them for you. How will you do that? You'll see in just a second. It will hurt you a little, so prepare yourself. After taking a deep breath, Yuan exerted some of his soul strength, manifesting it in the form of a rippling energy that swept through their surroundings. When Yu Ning and Xian saw this ripple, they immediately felt a sense of danger and dread coming from it. Without hesitation, they sacrificed some of their precious soul strength to shield themselves from the ripple. However, even with protection, the ripple tore right through their defenses and inflicted a brief but intense pain upon their soul. The pain lasted for a split second, but it was enough to embed a deep sense of fear within Yu Ning and Xian. Yu Ning and Xian subconsciously distanced themselves away from Yuan. Although he lacked the strength to destroy their souls, he possessed the power to torture their souls with immense pain, something even more terrifying than death to these immortal cultivators. That was only about 30% of my soul strength, Yuan spoke a moment later. What do you think? Do you still doubt my capabilities to help the both of you? Such powerful soul strength was only 30%. Impossible. Not even a spirit enlightenment cultivator would possess half of such prowess. Xian exclaimed, clearly in disbelief. Yuan smiled and replied, "If you don't believe me, I can do that again but with 50% of my soul strength this time." Yu Ning and Xian trembled in fear when they imagined themselves experiencing pain even worse than what they'd just experienced a moment ago. There's no need to go that far. I believe you," Yu Ning quickly said. "And me too. I apologize for doubting your capabilities." Xian followed. After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke. "I should have asked you this sooner, but what is your cultivation at?" "I was at 4th level God Ascension before my body was destroyed, but alas, after spending countless years in here, my cultivation dropped to Golden Immortal." Yu Ning sighed. "I was also at 4th level God Ascension, but I've managed to keep my cultivation at 1st level God Ascension because of my unique cultivation technique, but that won't last for much longer. I'll probably drop to true immortal in a few thousand years." Xian shook his head in a dejected manner. Yuan's heart dropped a little when he learned of Yu Ning's cultivation since it was below God Ascension, but he quickly regained hope after hearing Xian's words. "How long does it typically take for one to recreate their body?" Yuan then asked. "It's not really a matter of time but an issue of resources," Yu Ning said. "In order for us to recreate our body, we need the proper materials. If you have the materials on you right now, we can reconstruct our body immediately. Unfortunately, these materials are quite valuable and rare." Yuan nodded. "I understand. We can worry about finding these materials later. Before we begin, I have something I'd like to say, a request." He turned to look at Xian and continued. "You said that you'd give me anything I want if I took you out of this place, correct?" Xian swiftly nodded. "Indeed. As long as it's within my power, I will help you acquire it. I only need one thing from you, your assistance." "Can you explain?" "Of course. But before I do that, I have another question for you too. You guys have been trapped here before the heavenly war of immortals and gods even concluded, correct?" "That's right. Does that mean you aren't aware of the conclusion?" "No, we are aware. Some of the survivors had come here in the past after the war and told us everything. About how a hero known as the evil god showed up near the end and turned the tide against the celestial emperor, even slaying him in the end," Xian said. "He was widely recognized as the evil god, but he was also known as the God of War. If it hadn't been for his efforts, this place would have been even more crowded." Yu Ning chuckled. "We're also aware that the place we once knew as Divine Heaven is now known as the Nine Heavens," she added. "That's great. Then I'll start from the middle." Yuan proceeded to tell them about his homeland Earth, and how they'd been split from the Nine Heavens after the incident that separated the world into 9 realms. He then explained the current Celestial Emperor's actions and Earth's calamity. "I don't know why the Celestial Emperor brought us back to the 9 Heavens through Cultivation Online, but I will find out. However, before I can even do that, I must find a way to save my own world." Yuan continued to tell Xian his plan, which required the soul of a God Ascension Realm cultivator. "I think I get the gist of it. You just need me to supply this divine beast my spiritual energy, so that it can restore the formation, preventing your world from destruction, correct?" Xian asked. "Yes, that's right." Yuan nodded. "As long as it doesn't require me to exhaust my soul's strength, I will give you as much spiritual energy as you need." Xian quickly agreed to help. "Then you can enter this soul weapon first since I probably won't be able to use it while you are helping." Yuan extended the starry abyss, offering it to Xian, who immediately flew toward it without hesitation. Chapter 1443 Yu Ning. Chapter 1443 Yu Ning 1443 Yu Ning. The moment Xian entered the starry abyss, Yuan received a notification. Yuan suddenly felt the urge to retaliate and terminate Xian's soul, but he quickly resisted such an urge, and allowed Xian to occupy the starry abyss. Once Xian had successfully occupied the starry abyss, Yuan felt a chunk of his soul strength being consumed, absorbed by the starry abyss, but it wasn't enough to worry him. "That took about 15% of my soul strength, huh?" I anticipated worse. Yuan thought to himself. How do you feel? Jiran's voice resounded a moment later. I am fine. What about you? I haven't felt this good since I lost my physical body. It's also much more spacious in here than I'd anticipated, almost like I have my own little world. Jiran responded enthusiastically, clearly pleased with his new temporary home. When Yu Ning heard how content Jiran sounded, she immediately became fidgety, almost as though she couldn't wait to relocate. Sorry, but I probably won't be able to help with the formation at my current cultivation. However, I can still try. I can also do other things. Anything at all. Yu Ning said, sounding a little worried and desperate. Yuan looked at her and smiled. Don't worry, I promise to get the both of you out of here. And I will fulfill my promise even if neither of you can help me. Of course, he would have had to delay their plans until he found someone who could save his world. Thank you. I will definitely repay this debt once I reconstruct my physical body. Yu Ning exclaimed. If she had a physical body, there would have been tears flowing down her face right now. Yuan retrieved his Empyrean Overlord a moment later, and extended it toward Yu Ning. Seeing this, Yu Ning immediately began flying toward the sword. However, right before she reached it, an unfathomable presence appeared, followed by a strong pressure that restricted both Yu Ning and Yuan's movements. What the hell is this? Yu Ning had to use all of her strength just to utter these few words. Yuan gritted his teeth and shifted his gaze to look at the shadowy figure approaching them from a distance. This shadowy figure arrived before them in less than a second, hovering between Yuan and Yu Ning. Who are you? Yuan asked this newcomer who had the figure of an adult human, but without any facial features or distinct parts that would identify their identity. Oh, you can still speak while under my pressure? I knew you were no ordinary spirit king, but to think you were this exceptional. The shadowy figure spoke in a voice that resembled an old man. Why you're the Holy Sword Saint, Jin Jeming. What do you want from us? Yu Ning recognized the shadowy figure's identity from his voice alone. I don't need anything from you since I am here for this young man. Jin Jeming responded. He continued while staring at Yuan. I sensed your powerful soul strength and was intrigued, so I came here and observed you guys a little. So you were eavesdropping on us? How distasteful for someone of your stature, Holy Sword Saint. Jiran sneered from within the starry abyss. I stopped being the Holy Sword Saint when I was tossed into this place countless years ago. Jin Jeming retorted coldly. He then stared into Yuan's eyes and continued. You're looking for people to save your world, correct? Take me instead of this useless woman. I was at the 5th level God Ascension during my peak, and am still at the 3rd level God Ascension right now. If that's not enough, I will give you all of the Holy Sword Academy's sword techniques. I will be much more useful to you in every way. Why, you bastard! Yu Ning shouted in anger, yet she couldn't refute Jin Jeming's words. As the sect leader of the Holy Sword Academy, an esteemed sect that once rivaled the Immortal Monastery in their primes during the Primordial Era, he held authority and resources far surpassing Yu Ning's. However, Yuan spoke with a cold grin on his face. Do you normally restrict the movements of the person you're asking for help? Hearing such words, Jin Jeming released his pressure on Yuan, but kept it on Yu Ning, as he didn't want to give her the chance to run into the soul weapon. My apologies, it wasn't my intention. I don't usually panic, but even a god would lose some senses after spending so much time in this gloomy place. Yuan didn't immediately respond and pondered his next step. Omicron while he had no intention of helping Jin Jeming, he couldn't simply refuse to help him, as Jin Jeming would definitely attack him, and he wasn't close to being strong enough to oppose someone at God Ascension, even with evil god's memories. In fact, even if he worked together with Yu Ning and Jiran, they wouldn't be able to defeat Jin Jeming. Yuan. Yu Ning looked at him with a look of acceptance, almost as if she'd given up on leaving with him. You should take him. I'll stay here for now. If one of them leaves their soul weapon in the future, and you don't mind returning for me, I will be eternally grateful. Yu Ning recognized the gravity of their circumstances. Jin Jeming wielded enough power to effortlessly annihilate them all, so she decided to stay behind. In doing so, she would at the very least still have a chance to leave the Shadow Realm in the future. Looks like I will owe you a favor now, Fairy Yu. Jean Gemming smiled. In response, Yu Ning merely snorted coldly. However, a moment later, to their surprise, Yuan shook his head and said, "No, I won't let you stay behind. I said I'd take you out of this place, so I will." What? But before Yu Ning could finish her sentence, Yuan continued, "I didn't mention this before because it wasn't necessary, but I actually have 3 soul weapons in my possession." "You what?" The 3 immortals exclaimed in a shocked voice after learning of this information. Chapter 1444 Holy Sword Saint. Chapter 1444 Holy Sword Saint 1444 Holy Sword Saint. Why you possess 3 soul weapons? No, that's impossible. Jean Gemming quickly expressed his doubt. After all, even the most talented cultivators during the primordial era had 2 soul weapons at the most. 3 was simply unheard of, even unimaginable. Why would I lie to you? Especially when this sort of lie can easily be exposed. Yuan shook his head. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and show us your 3rd soul weapon. Jean Gemming urged impatiently. Yuan nodded and retrieved his 3rd soul weapon, the Dragon's Soul. The moment the Dragon's Soul made its appearance, its presence permeated the surroundings with a profound aura, causing the souls of the immortals to quiver in awe and fear. What a powerful soul weapon! They cried inwardly. Let me dwell within that soul weapon, Jean Gemming hastily said as he pointed at the Dragon's Soul. Yuan casually nodded, sure. Jean Gemming sensed something was amiss, almost as though had gotten what he wanted too easily. However, when he reconsidered Yuan's weak cultivation base and their circumstances, Jean Gemming no longer pondered too deeply about it and nodded. But will you be able to handle 3 immortal souls at once? Yu Ning suddenly inquired in a worried tone. Moreover, Jean Gemming's soul would be the most strenuous on Yuan's soul strength due to his higher cultivation base. Yuan looked at Yu Ning with a calm smile and said, I might be weakened a little, but of course it's no problem for me. Yuan retired the Empyrean Overlord, offered the Dragon's Soul to Jean Gemming, and said, Here you go, Senior. I'll let you go first if you're worried that I won't have enough soul strength to carry all 3 of you at once. Jean Gemming nodded and spoke as he flew into the Dragon's Soul. I will remember your act of kindness. Yuan felt about 20% of his soul strength being consumed. Yuan, you need to be careful of the Holy Sword Saint. He went astray during the war, and became an evil cultivator, who took advantage of the chaos to strengthen himself. Jiran suddenly warned him through divine sense. Yuan didn't respond, and merely held a mysterious smile on his face. A moment after Jean Gemming entered the Dragon's Soul, his satisfied voice resounded. This place is much more spacious and luxurious than I'd expected. Heavens! I can even feel my soul strength growing stronger just by staying in here. Ha ha ha! This place is fucking amazing! The more I explore the wait. Who the hell are you? Jean Gemming suddenly became alert, his voice filled with surprise. You little bastard. This soul weapon is already occupied by another soul. How dare you trick me? Whatever. I simply need to destroy this soul, and become its sole occupant. A different voice suddenly resounded. Not only did this bug invade my sanctuary, but it even dared to threaten me? Ha ha ha. The voices suddenly stopped. Yu Ning and Jiran swallowed nervously as they waited for the results. A few moments later, wait. Please. Spare me. I will immediately leave this place. Jean Gemming's voice returned, but it was filled with shock and fear, sounding as though had encountered a ghost. Please. Have mercy. I was wrong. I was wrong. Yu Ning and Jiran listened to Jean Gemming beg the mysterious soul with wide eyes filled with disbelief. Mother. Father. Someone. Save him. I will remember this, Tian. Dragon Goddess Yu's voice suddenly resounded with a displeased tone. Yuan wore a bittersweet smile on his face as he responded. I wasn't sure you were actually in there and saw the opportunity to find out, so I took my chances. Sorry, Dragon Goddess Yayo. Now that I've confirmed you are dwelling within the dragon's soul, why have you been ignoring me? However, there were no responses from Dragon Goddess Yeo. The silent treatment again, huh? Yuan sighed as he wondered what he was doing wrong. Unfortunately, he probably won't figure it out until he recovers more of the immortal monarch, Tian's memories. Ding. Dragon Soul, Level 1 rank. Soul Weapon Growth Rate, Fast requirement. Unique ability, Dragon's Roar lets out a resounding battle cry that shatters the surrounding spiritual energy. However, that was not the end. Ding. After devouring the soul of a God Ascension Cultivator, the dragon's soul unsurprisingly leveled up twice in an instant. Unique ability, Dragon's Sanctuary creates a domain around the wielder that seals all spiritual energy from those that do not have dragon blood. Does not affect the wielder. This dragon's soul is... Yuan swallowed nervously after seeing its overpowered unique abilities. However, its unique ability only applied to spiritual energy, so it might be ineffective against immortals who could wield immortal chi and celestial chi. Still, it was a very powerful ability that could surprise even immortals. As for those who cannot use immortal chi and do not have dragon blood flowing through their veins, they were simply screwed. Yuan reclaimed the dragon's soul and retired the Empyrean Overlord again. He looked at Yu Ning, who was still frozen from shock, and said, "It's your turn." Yet, Yu Ning didn't fly into the Empyrean Overlord and stood there like a stone statue, her gaze fixated on Yuan's calm smile. Seeing this, Yuan chuckled and said, "Don't worry, this soul weapon is definitely unoccupied. Nothing will happen to you." "Why, you promise?" Yu Ning muttered in a timid voice. "Of course. I only killed that guy because I knew of his character," he nodded. Jin Jemming was a renowned individual whose infamy reached even Tian Xian's ears, so he already knew of Jin Jemming's vicious character even before Ji Ran's warning. Chapter 1445 Replenishing the Lord's Cultivation. Chapter 1445 Replenishing the Lord's Cultivation. 1445 Replenishing the Lord's Cultivation. After receiving Yuan's reassurance that the Empyrean Overlord was unoccupied, Yu Ning took a deep breath before entering the sword. Wow! They weren't exaggerating when they said it was spacious inside a soul weapon. You can probably fit 1 or 2 major cities in here, and still have room to spare. Yu Ning's surprised voice resounded a moment later. "I'm glad you like it." Yuan smiled. "What are you going to do now?" Ji Ran asked. "Since I've accomplished what I came here to do, I will leave this place and return to the 9 heavens," he said. "And because it's been a long time since you guys last seen the world outside of the Shadow Realm, I won't immediately ask you to start working, Ji Ran. However, I also cannot delay it for too long. Honestly, I don't care if I have to immediately start working. After all, I am satisfied just knowing that I am no longer in the Shadow Realm," Ji Ran quickly replied. Yuan nodded. "Let me leave this place and show you my world first." However, Yuan did not directly leave the Shadow Realm. Instead, he returned to the nearest city, where he logged off. Upon returning to Earth, Yuan immediately climbed to the peak of the Dragon Spiral Mountain to meet with the Lord. He met Leah halfway through the formation. "I know you called in advance, but you couldn't have waited a few minutes for me?" Leah complained with a slight frown on her face. Yuan smiled and said, "I haven't cracked the formation yet, but I instinctively know the way to the peak after walking through this mist multiple times." "Huh. Formations don't even work like that," Leah exclaimed with a look of disbelief on her face. Yuan shrugged and continued climbing the mountain. Sometime later, they arrived at the peak of the mountain, where the Lord was already prepared to meet them. "I heard you had something urgent to tell me," the Lord asked. Yuan nodded and retrieved the Starry Abyss and Empyrean Overlord. "Those are your soul weapons? Where are we? We were still at the Shadow Realm an instant ago. How did we end up here before I can even blink?" Ji Ran and Yu Ning's bewildered voices suddenly resounded. In their eyes, they were in the Shadow Realm when their scenery suddenly flickered and changed to something completely new and unfamiliar. "Calm down. This is Earth, my home world." Yuan explained the situation to them. "Earth? Already? I was expecting it to take some time, at least much longer than this." Ran muttered in a dazed voice. Sometime later, Yuan said, Ran, meet the Lord. Lord, this is Ran, and he'll be helping you with your cultivation base from now on. The Lord approached the starry abyss with a look of wonder on his face. I don't have a name, but you may call me Xue. The Lord said, and he continued, I also cannot sense your presence or cultivation from out here. Ran then introduced himself. My name is Ran, and I used to be the sect leader of the immortal monastery before my body was destroyed by the celestial emperor and tossed into the shadow realm, where I spent countless years. I was at the 4th level of God Ascension during my peak, but I was reduced to the 1st level of God Ascension after spending so long in the shadow realm. The sect leader of the immortal monastery. I never would have imagined that such a renowned figure would still be alive in this day and age. The Lord exclaimed, his voice filled with astonishment. Oh, you know of me? Ran sounded pleasantly surprised as well, as he didn't expect to be recognized by someone who wasn't from the primordial era. Of course. You were a prominent figure in the primordial era, also known as the Devil Hand Madman after single-handedly annihilating the maleficent devil cult. And as the 2nd sect leader of the immortal monastery, you led the sect to its peak, becoming a top 5 sect within the divine heaven. Although the Lord sounded like a fanboy, one must consider his point of view. In the Lord's eyes, he was speaking to someone who should have perished long ago and only existed in stories. Even someone as ancient as the Lord came into existence long after the primordial realm ended. He was no different than a baby if compared to Ran or Yu Ning. I think we'll get along just fine. Ran sounded a little prideful as he spoke. Omicron, are you sure you want to immediately start working? Yuan asked him a moment later. Ran nodded inside the starry abyss. It's fine, I can start working now. It's not like I have to do it without any breaks, as I will need time to replenish my exhausted spiritual energy afterward, anyway. Furthermore, although Xue is hiding it, he's actually in a lot of pain. His body is in a mess. I'm surprised he's managed to survive this long, much less support such a powerful formation for so long. Ran spoke with deep admiration for the Lord's preservation and determination to protect Earth. Sometime later, the Lord sat on the ground and closed his eyes, seemingly going to sleep. Meanwhile, Ran left the starry abyss and took the form of a middle-aged man before sitting behind the Lord. I will begin transferring my spiritual energy to you now. Ran warned as he placed his palms on the Lord's back and began transferring his spiritual energy. A refreshed and relieved look immediately appeared on the Lord's face, resembling an old man who regained years of energy after soaking in a hot spring. I can do this for 5 days before I run out of spiritual energy. Ran said a moment later. Yuan nodded. I will return before then. In the meantime, I'll show Yu Ning around this world. Not wanting to disturb them any longer, Yuan descended the mountain and returned to his living quarters. Chapter 1446 A New Era on Earth. Chapter 1446 A New Era on Earth. 1446 A New Era on Earth. Upon returning to his living quarters, Yuan encountered Meifeng waiting at the front door. Are you waiting for someone? Yuan asked her. Yes, I was waiting for you since I noticed you had left. Meifeng nodded. Did something happen? Yes, but it's nothing bad for now. Yuan frowned slightly upon hearing this and said, Let's go inside first. Tell me everything. Once they were seated inside, Meifeng spoke. The others are already aware of this, so you're the only one who is still out of the loop, unless Leah told you. He quickly shook his head. She didn't tell me anything. Meifeng proceeded to show her palm to Yuan and continued to speak. Shortly after the system update, people noticed they could use the system even when they are logged out of. What? Yuan's eyes widened with shock after learning of this news. Watch this. The next moment, an item that resembled a storage pouch suddenly materialized out of thin air and appeared on Meifeng's palm. We can bring certain items from to Earth now. This includes treasures, medicine, and most importantly, cultivation resources. The entire world's amid an evolution as we speak. Yuan sat there with a dazed expression on his face as he contemplated this new information. Sometime later, Yuan flipped his palm and retrieved a monster core that exuded the spiritual energy of a peak spirit grandmaster. It actually works. Then, without hesitation, he moved the monster core to his lips before swallowing it casually. Yuan could immediately feel his spiritual energy soaring, as well as his cultivation base. A few moments later, Yuan muttered, "Character status. Cultivation, 9th level Spirit Grandmaster. Bloodline, Immortal Monarch Bloodline. Physique, Heaven Refining Physique, Golden Immortal Physique. So it's a simplified version, huh?" He looked at Mei Feng and asked, "What's going on with the world now that this is possible?" Well, for starters, those who have the capability started consuming powerful cultivation resources left and right, causing their cultivation base to soar. I believe the strongest cultivator is a spirit lord at the moment, which is a massive increase compared to before the system update, where the strongest cultivator was only a spirit master, not including you and the others. Yuan nodded and asked, "What about Mei Xiu and the others?" "They've decided to wait for you before deciding on anything." Yuan showed a bittersweet smile and sighed. "They shouldn't need to worry about me and do what they believe is right." "And why didn't Leah tell me about this? She could have at least mentioned it before I left. Anyways, tell them to do whatever they want the next time you see them. I'll be leaving the Dragon Spiral Mountain for a bit." "Where are you going?" Mei Feng asked. "It's been some time since I saw Yu Ro, so I'm going to give her a visit." "Omicronim, are you going alone?" "Yes, I am going to fly straight there and back." Sometime later, Yuan asked, "By the way, if we can bring things from the 9 heavens to Earth, can we also bring things from Earth to the 9 heavens?" "People have tried that but were unable to do so. Even the things that can be brought to Earth are limited, so we cannot bring anything we want." "What's the limit?" "Treasures divine grade and above, as well as some of the more powerful cultivation resources." Hearing this, Yuan immediately tried to retrieve his divine grade treasures, and sure enough, he was unable to. "I guess they don't want us to progress too fast over here, but it doesn't mean things won't change in the future. We should also start preparing for this change. Who knows what people will start doing with their newfound strength. This world is too small for any cultivator nonsense, especially as the average cultivation increases. Compared to the 9 heavens, Earth's size was akin to a grain of sand in a desert. If cultivators started going crazy with martial techniques and powerful treasures, Earth wouldn't last long and would be destroyed even before the Lord's formation collapsed. How are the Cultivators Association and the governments around the world dealing with this change?" he then asked. "Well, they're trying to do something. Regulations are becoming stricter, and they're thinking of restricting everyone's cultivation base to a certain level, so that we won't be able to do too much damage even if we tried, but I'm not sure how they'll be able to regulate that. It seems impossible." Yuan rubbed his eyes and sighed. "Looks like I have to speed things up and try to reconnect the 9 heavens and Earth. But that will also have its own problem. I will speak with the Lord when I return. Let me see for myself what the world is like nowadays first." Mei Feng nodded and followed him outside. "Stay safe, Yuan. It'll be a lot more dangerous out there now that everyone has access to powerful cultivation resources and treasures. You won't be as invincible as before," Mei Feng warned him. Yuan chuckled. "We'll see about that." Sometime later, Yuan retrieved the Empyrean Overlord and jumped onto it before soaring into the sky, quickly disappearing from Dragon Spiral Mountain. Wow. Although the spiritual energy in this world is pathetic, it has a very beautiful scenery, Yu Ning exclaimed in excitement as they soared through several cities. Yuan showed a bittersweet smile and said, "If we want to preserve these sceneries, we need to find a way to stop those with bad intentions from damaging them. Unfortunately, that is easier said than done." "That is true. In fact, I can easily cover the entire world with my divine sense alone. This place is truly too small. If a fight between 2 spirit kings broke out, it'd be an environmental disaster," Yu Ning said. "Unless they are insane, I doubt anyone would do anything too crazy. But then again, there are plenty of insane individuals out there." Yuan sighed. With the rapid changes happening on Earth, Yuan started pondering methods to keep his friends and family safe even in this new era. Chapter 1447 A Surprise Visit. Chapter 1447 A Surprise Visit. 1447 A Surprise Visit. After flying for almost an entire day without rest, Yuan arrived at the Eternal Lotus's headquarters. The guards at the front gate were startled when he suddenly descended from the sky and landed before them. Who are you? Yuan greeted the female guards with a handsome smile and said, "Hello, I am Yuan. I'm here to visit my little sister, Yu. Yuan. The guards' eyes widened with surprise, but there was a hint of doubt in their eyes for some reason. Please give us a minute to notify Yu. Wait. Yuan suddenly stopped them. I actually came here unannounced to surprise her, so if you don't mind, can you let me inside without notifying her? You can let Bai Lianhua know though. Sure, wait a second. How do we know you're actually Yuan, and not someone disguised as Yuan? One of the guards suddenly said with a doubtful frown on her face. For all we know, you could have consumed an appearance-altering pill. After all, medicine and pills are part of the things that people are now able to acquire through the system. So things such as appearance-altering pills are becoming more common on Earth. Yuan didn't anticipate being questioned in such a manner, feeling like he was still in. I'm not sure how you want me to prove my identity. How about my Cultivators Association ID card? Those can be faked, too, Yuan sighed. Aren't you being a little too paranoid? I'm just trying to visit my little sister. As if. Player Yuan is at the top when it comes to stolen identity right now. And Yu is also very popular with countless admirers. There are plenty of people who would disguise themselves as Yuan to get to her. In fact, it has happened before. Really? Yuan's eyes widened at this information, and he wondered when Yu became so popular. If you can't prove your identity, you may scram before we escalate this. Hearing this, Yuan shook his head and proceeded to take out his cell phone. He dialed a number before putting it on speaker. Hello, Yuan. Bai Lianhua's voice resounded a moment later. Hey, sorry to bother you, and this will sound sudden, but I am outside your headquarters right now. Really? I'll be right there. Thanks. Yuan closed the call and silently stared at the female guards, their eyes as wide as saucers. It was completely silent with neither of the guards uttering a single word, until Bai Lianhua showed up. Yuan! Bai Lianhua rushed in front of him with a strong urge to embrace him, but she managed to control her emotions at the last second. You should have notified me earlier so that I could have called for Yu as well. Yuan shook his head and said, I actually wanted to surprise her, so I am glad you didn't. Come, I'll bring you to her. He nodded. Wait. The female guards suddenly stopped them. What is it? Bai Lianhua asked, unaware of their circumstances. Meanwhile, Yuan spoke with a calm smile on his face. Don't worry about it. You were just being diligent. Keep up the good work. Did something happen? Bai Lianhua looked at him with raised eyebrows. No, nothing at all. If you say so. However, Bai Lianhua silently glared at the guards, almost as though she was trying to tell them that she would question them later. Once they entered the gates, Bai Lianhua brought Yuan straight to Yu's room. She changed rooms? Yuan asked as they walked in a different direction. Yes. She was recently promoted, so she gets to live in her own room instead of sharing it. She's a hard worker. Looking at your progress, I can say the same to you. Yuan smiled. At a glance, Bai Lianhua's cultivation was actually at first-level Spirit Lord. This is mostly because of the treasures you left behind for my family, she said with a somewhat bashful smile. Speaking of your family, is everything okay for you guys? Are the other families bullying you? He asked. A bittersweet smile appeared on Bai Lianhua's face as she suddenly stopped walking. She turned around to look at him and sighed. Since we refused to partake in that event where they ambushed you, they've been blaming us for several things. It's nothing we can't handle, but the pressure on us has been increasing lately because of the system update. Everything is a mess nowadays. How are they pressuring you if you don't mind me asking? He inquired for more information. They're mostly messing with our business and bullying our faction with challenges. We've been bumped down a few ranks because of that. Alright. A faction can challenge another faction to friendly matches to increase their rank. I forgot this system existed since we've never been challenged before. Who in their right mind would challenge your demon sealing faction? However, things might change soon with everyone increasing their cultivation much quicker. Oh, keep that in mind. Bai Lianhua then said. Anyways, you don't need to worry about us. We can deal with some bullying and they'll eventually stop. Yuan nodded. Don't hesitate to come to me if you need help. Of course. They resumed walking shortly after, and quickly arrived at Yu Rao's new room, which was located right in front of a small but beautiful fish pond. Yu Rao, you have a guest. Bai Lianhua knocked on her door. The door opened a moment later, and a beautiful young lady in a somewhat messy appearance showed her face. You've grown up, Yu Rao. Be brother? What are you doing here? I've come here to visit you. Why didn't you call me beforehand? I am not prepared to meet you. Give me a minute. Yu Rao suddenly went back inside her room, and even slammed the door on them. Her actions left Yuan speechless. Several minutes later, Yu Rao returned with her hair neatly combed, a cute dress and a subtle touch of makeup adorned her face. Brother! What a surprise! When did you arrive? Yu Rao greeted him with a bright smile, acting like their meeting a few minutes ago never even happened. You've grown up, Yu Rao. Yuan repeated with a stiff smile on his face. Chapter 1448 The Plan to Protect Earth. Chapter 1448 The Plan to Protect Earth. 1448 The Plan to Protect Earth. After successfully controlling her emotions for 2 seconds, Yu Rao stopped caring and jumped at Yuan with her arms wide open, embracing him tightly. I've missed you, brother. You should visit me more often. She complained. Sorry, I've been incredibly busy lately, but I'll try to visit you more often. I don't believe you. You said you'd visit me soon every time we spoke on the phone, but this is your first time showing up. Yu Rao puffed her cheeks and complained. Yuan fell silent. Brother Yuan? Let's talk inside. I have something important to tell you. Bai Lianhua, you should join us. Yuan said with a serious expression on his face. Yu Rao swallowed nervously when she saw his expression. She quickly released him from her embrace and silently nodded before entering her room. Just call me Lianhua, Bai Lianhua said as she followed Yu Rao inside. Yuan entered last and closed the door behind him. Once they were all seated, Yuan took a deep breath and started explaining the situation to them. As you probably already realized by now, isn't simply just a game. The 9 heavens truly exist somewhere in this universe, and our world Earth used to be part of the 9 heavens. However, after a certain incident, we were split from the 9 heavens and drifted away. When a world lacks spiritual energy, it will naturally collapse. Fortunately for us, we have an expert in this world who has the capabilities to support this world with his cultivation base, through a powerful formation that surrounds Earth. And he has been doing so for millions of years. Unfortunately, due to which transfers our soul from Earth to the 9 heavens and back every time we log in or off, it has caused irreversible damage to the formation. If this formation is destroyed, the Earth will cease to exist as well. What? Wait a second, Yuan. This is too much information to digest. Are you telling me that our world is ending soon? Bai Lianhua exclaimed, her face filled with shock and fear. I know it's a lot of information, and yes, the world is at risk of being destroyed. However, you don't need to worry, as I have managed to find a way to prevent it for now. That's why I have been so busy lately, Yu Rao. Unbelievable. To think you've been trying to save the world. I cannot even begin to imagine the burden on you. I'm sorry for getting mad at you just now. Yu Rao was on the verge of crying after learning the truth. So the world is safe from destruction now, correct? Bai Lianhua asked for clarification. He nodded. Yes, but only for now. It's just a temporary fix, and with the recent changes, I'm worried it might affect the formation even more. Moreover, our world is too small to have spirit lords, much less spirit kings that will appear sooner or later. The room fell silent. Bai Lianhua then said, regarding the cultivation situation, the Cultivators Association and governments around the world have already begun working together to prevent cultivators from doing too much destruction. This information is only known to the top legacy families, but they plan on restricting everyone's cultivation inside cities to Spirit Master. And how do they plan on doing that? Yuan inquired. They have recently created a device that can forcefully restrict a cultivator's cultivation to a specific level, and they plan on using it soon. I don't know when they'll be in service, but the device should be undergoing rigorous testing as we speak. Yuan narrowed his eyes and began pondering after hearing this information. I just thought of a great idea. He muttered. What? Instead of waiting years for these devices, I can simply replace them with arrays and formations. Formations? You know how to create formations? Array masters are rare even in Cultivation Online. Bai Lianhua said. I do, but I am nowhere near experienced or powerful enough to cover the entire Earth, so I will have to start studying arrays more seriously now. Even if you could achieve such a feat, do you really think it's a good idea to restrict everyone's cultivation base? Yu asked. Hearing this, Yuan sighed. I am aware of how oppressive and controlling it may sound, but this is for the best for everyone in our world. Forget about spirit kings. A fight between two spirit lords could already easily destroy a city. We didn't have this issue before because it was impossible to reach Spirit Lord with the resources available on Earth, but now that we can acquire and use cultivation resources directly from 9 heavens, it will only be a matter of time before we have an abundance of Spirit Lords and even Spirit King. Moreover, this isn't something new, as such a system already exists within the 9 heavens. Think about it. Spirit Kings are forbidden to exist within the lower heaven without special permission, and those who manage to reach Spirit King in the lower heaven are forced to ascend to the next realm, where it's large enough to accommodate their prowess. This sort of rule exists for a good reason. If we don't want Earth to be destroyed by insane people or by accident, we can only restrict everyone's cultivation so that it becomes impossible to do so. And in the future, when we reconnect Earth with 9 heavens, we can continue following their system, so anyone that wishes to increase their cultivation past the limit could continue doing so in the 9 heavens. That sounds like a good plan. Bai Lianhua nodded. I can't believe we're making decisions that will affect the entire world in my room. And with just the 3 of us. Yu muttered in a dazed voice after coming to this realization. Yuan chuckled. The Cultivators Association and governments around the world have the same plan. We're just going to make it more reliable and protect every inch of the world. Now it's only a matter of who finishes first, their devices or my study. Chapter 1449 Possessing Yuan's Body. Chapter 1449 Possessing Yuan's Body. 1449 Possessing Yuan's Body. Wait a second, Yuan. While we can restrict everyone's cultivation bases, what about their weapons? Are there formations that can prevent people from using treasures that are too powerful? Bai Lianhua asked. Powerful treasures will require more spiritual energy to use. If we limit the cultivation base enough, it would automatically restrict their weapon usage as well. Then what should the cultivation limit be? Spirit Grandmaster? Spirit Master? Yu then asked. Yuan took a moment to ponder before responding. I believe limiting everyone to Spirit Grandmaster should be more than enough. If that's still too much or too little, we can always adjust the limit in the future. Now let's just hope that Earth will last until you can create these formations. Bai Lianhua sighed. If you want, I can create the formation immediately. An unfamiliar voice to Yu and Bai Lianhua suddenly resounded. Yuan turned to look at the Empyrean Overlord, which had laid against the wall, and asked, Are you an array master, Yu Ning? Yu Ning? Yu and Bai Lianhua turned to look at his sword with raised eyebrows. She's a soul from the 9 heavens. Due to circumstances, she's currently occupying my sword. Yuan gave them a brief explanation. Yu Ning responded the next moment. Indeed, I am an array master. In fact, I am a level 7 array master. And you can create a formation that will cover the entire Earth? Bai Lianhua asked. Of course. Your world is extremely small, even tiny after all. The 9 heavens have villages larger than your world. It won't take any effort for someone with my cultivation base to cover this entire world. However, since I am only a soul, it will be a little tricky, as souls don't have the capability to create formations. Then how are you going to create the formation? Yuan asked. I will use a medium. So you're going to possess someone. It sounds bad when you put it that way, but yes, ITLL require me to take control over another body. However, it cannot be just anyone since their body needs to be able to withstand my soul. Yuan pondered a moment before pointing at himself. Am I qualified to be your medium? You definitely qualify, but do you trust me enough to lend me your body? She asked. Well, what can you do once you take control of my body? Any side effects? A lot can be done honestly. I can move it as though it's my body and even temporarily transfer some of my cultivation to you. But that's pretty much about it unless I forcefully destroy or consume your soul. If I consume your soul, it'll acquire your memories and secrets. If I destroy your soul, it'll permanently acquire your body. Though you don't have to worry about me messing with your soul since I won't be able to do anything to you, who possess 3 soul weapons, each housing a powerful soul. If you still don't trust me, I can swear another heavenly oath. Oh, and there aren't any side effects as long as I don't spend too long in your body. It typically takes weeks if not months to see any side effects, and I will only be using your body for a few minutes. Yuan nodded his head and said, I understand. And there's no need for an oath. I trust that you won't try anything funny. You may be an immortal, but your soul isn't strong enough to do anything even if I let you. When do you want to create the formation? Yu Ning then asked, not questioning how a mortal's soul could be stronger than an immortal's soul. Can you make it so that certain areas or specific individuals in this world aren't affected by the formation? Yuan then asked. Of course. Great. Then let's create the formation now. As for the exceptions, you can decide who to exclude from the formation's power later. Since I will be using your body to create the formation, you will be its creator, meaning you will have full control over it. Yu Ning interrupted. All right. Yuan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Whenever you are ready. Yu Ning took a moment to prepare herself before leaving the Empyrean Overlord and entering Yuan's body. A chill traversed Yuan's body when Yu Ning entered his body. Of course, Yuan could sense every movement and action made by Yu Ning while she was inside his body. Omicron M, I will now try to take over your body. Please don't resist, as this will only make things difficult for both of us. Yu Ning's voice echoed inside his head. Okay. A few moments later, Yuan slowly opened his eyes, but it was not Yuan in control. Yu Ning had successfully taken over Yuan's body. She took a moment to inspect Yuan's body out of curiosity, and was immediately overwhelmed with shock and fear by what she saw and felt from his body. Heavens! What kind of heaven-defying body is this, Yuan? Not even immortals have such a powerful physical body. Yu Ning became increasingly terrified as she realized how powerful Yuan was. And this was without taking into account his martial techniques. Once she was finished admiring Yuan's body, Yu Ning transferred some of her cultivation base to Yuan, causing his cultivation to skyrocket all the way to Spirit King. How weird. For some reason, I cannot increase my cultivation any higher than Spirit King. With my cultivation base, I should be able to help you reach Divine King easily. Yu Ning muttered in a dazed voice after experiencing this weird phenomenon. It has something to do with my physique. Are you unable to create the formation with my current cultivation? Yuan asked. No, this is enough to create the formation, but you'll need to reapply the formation every year if you want to keep it active. That's good enough for now. Then I will start making the formation now. Yu Ning started creating perfect array symbols with extreme speed, filling the room with tens of thousands of them in seconds. Chapter 1450 Godlike Body. Chapter 1450 Godlike Body. 1450 Godlike Body. Wow, it's so beautiful. Yu muttered in a dazed voice as she was quickly mesmerized by the golden array symbols filling up the room. By Lianhua, on the other hand, was shocked at the speed at which Yu Ning was forming the array symbols. She had seen array masters at work several times but none of them were even a small fraction of Yu Ning's speed. Naturally, the array masters that Bai Lianhua saw were at most level 1 or level 2 array masters. They were simply incomparable to a level 7 array master. In fact, it would be disrespectful to Yu Ning to do so. For the next 15 minutes, Yu Ning continuously created array symbols without stopping even for a split second. And Yuan's body was soaked in sweat by the end. Once finished, she combined all the symbols and shot them toward the sky. The symbols flew right through the ceiling and quickly disappeared behind the clouds. A few seconds later, the symbols exploded, quickly covering the entire world with a transparent veil that could only be sensed by level 6 and above array masters. Yu Ning immediately fell to her but afterward and gasped for air. "Brother!" Yuan, Yu Rou and Bai Lianhua rushed to his side with worried expressions. However, Yu Ning was still in control and said he's fine. He's just a little weak after exhausting his spiritual energy. "Yuan, I would return your control now, but it might be dangerous to do so while you're exhausted, so I will restore some of your spiritual energy first, if you don't mind." "I don't mind." Yu Ning nodded and corrected her position before absorbing the spiritual energy around them. A few seconds later. Heavens! What is this cultivation speed? When Yu Ning realized how much spiritual energy she was absorbing with almost zero effort, she was so shocked that she nearly lost control over Yuan's body. It's so easy cultivating in this body. It was so easy that Yu Ning wondered if she could sleep and cultivate simultaneously in Yuan's body. This is a godlike body that would make even gods jealous. Was he born with this body, or did he temper it to such a state? Yu Ning felt her borders widening after cultivating in Yuan's body, experiencing what it felt like to be a frog in a well again after countless years. If she were born with such a heaven-defying body, she would have easily achieved cultivation god with the same amount of time it took her to reach 4th level god ascension. With such an amazing body, even an immortal like Yu Ning couldn't help but have thoughts of coveting it. Unfortunately, she knew that any attempt to steal Yuan's body would be in vain, so she swiftly tossed away those unhealthy thoughts. I may not be able to have his body for myself, but as long as I follow him, it may be possible to taste it in the future. A few minutes later, Yu Ning completely replenished Yuan's depleted cultivation base even before she realized it. "I will leave your body now," Yu Ning said in a dejected voice, sounding heartbroken because she could no longer experience Yuan's godlike talents. After leaving Yuan's body, she immediately flew back into the Empyrean Overlord. She continued speaking the following moment. "Although I have created the formation, I have yet to activate it. You can do so whenever you feel like it. Thank you for your hard work." Yuan lifted his head to look at the ceiling and continued. "I will activate it when I return to the Dragon Spiral Mountain and speak with the Lord." "What should we do now?" Yu Rou asked. "I was going to walk around the city with you, but if you're busy, I won't bother you." "There's no way I would be busy when you're here," Yu Rou quickly said. Her schedule consisted mostly of training and cultivation, and she wasn't going to waste time doing any of that when her dear brother was visiting for the first time in a long time. "I'll let your teacher know that you won't be able to attend training." "Thank you. By the way, how long do you plan on staying here?" Yu Rou asked. "I was planning on staying for a day or two, but I can stay longer if you want. You still have a lot of things to do in Cultivation Online, right? As much as I want you to stay longer, I won't take up too much of your time, especially when you're trying to save Earth." Yu Rou turned to look at Bai Lianhua and continued. "Do you want to come with us, senior sister?" Yu Rou knew how much Bai Lianhua fancied Yuan, so she purposefully asked for her presence. However, Bai Lianhua refused her offer and said, "Thank you for asking, but I will have to decline. Maybe next time, since I don't dare to intrude on your family time. I also have a lot of work to do." "If you say so." Yu Rou nodded and didn't say anything else. Yuan left the building with Yu Rou shortly after. The two of them walked around the city and dined at many of the highest-rated restaurants in their city. "It's been so long since I've gotten the chance to relax like this." Yu Rou sighed as they exited their third restaurant. "Yes, it feels like thousands of years ago." Yuan muttered with a profound expression on his face. When he acquired Tian Xian's memories, he essentially had to experience Tian Xian's entire life again. And since it was done recently, it felt like thousands of years had passed for Yuan since he met Yu, hence why he suddenly decided to visit her. Yu noticed something was a little different about Yuan, but she couldn't pinpoint what exactly, and just thought it was because of his burdens. He's saving the world without most of the world knowing. He's probably putting on a brave face to not worry me. If only there were something I could do for him, she sighed inwardly. Chapter 1451 Simply Curious. Chapter 1451 Simply Curious. 1451 Simply Curious. After spending nearly the entire day touring the city without any disturbance, their peace was finally broken when someone on the street recognized them. Hey, look over there. Isn't that player Yuan? Someone there suddenly blurted out loud in the busy street. This single sentence caused nearly every head there to turn left and right until they also noticed Yuan. Holy shit. It's actually him. Are you sure that's really him? What if he's another imposter, and only pretending to be player Yuan with an appearance-altering pill? That's what I thought at first, but look at that pretty lady beside him. That's Yu, his little sister. What if she's also an imposter? Who would be insane enough to put so much effort into pretending to be player Yuan? You have no idea. Due to the changes in the world, it became a common habit for many to doubt the identity of influential people, especially player Yuan, who was at the very top of the list of celebrities nowadays. In fact, it was a miracle that had managed to spend an entire day with Yu without being noticed. Are you really player Yuan? Please tell me you're not fake. Can I have your autograph, please? I am your #1 fan, player Yuan. Please shake my hand. Nearly everyone on that street rushed to meet Yuan, instantly encircling him and Yu. Ah, I should have worn my mask. Yuan sighed. This is why I rarely come outside nowadays. Yu shook her head. Her popularity and fame had reached heaven long ago just by being Yuan's little sister. While she has her own accomplishments and charms, they paled in comparison to being his little sister, blood-related or not. Yu grabbed my hand. Yuan's voice suddenly resounded in her head. She didn't question it, and immediately grabbed his hand. The next moment, both of their figures began levitating off the ground, and hovered above the surprised crowd. He's flying. He's definitely the real player Yuan. That doesn't prove anything. Anybody can reach Spirit Grandmaster nowadays with enough money. Fuck, how can someone be this distrustful? I wouldn't be surprised if you doubt your own identity. Yuan ignored the crowd and flew away with Yu, quickly disappearing from the rowdy scene. This reminds me of that one time when we sneaked outside to play at a nearby park, only for you to be recognized by someone. If we hadn't started running immediately, your fans would have surrounded us. In the end, we'd only managed to play less than 5 minutes at that park. Yu chuckled as she recalled some of her earlier memories. Yuan smiled and said, I also remember being scolded to hell and back for that little stunt. After a moment of silence, Yu muttered, Our parents. I wonder where they are now and what they have been doing since they disappeared from our lives. What about you, brother Yuan? Do you often find yourself wondering about them? Hearing her question, Yuan responded calmly and detachedly. To be completely honest, I haven't thought of them even for a split moment since our last meeting. However, now that you mention them, I guess I am a little curious about their whereabouts. But don't misunderstand. I am simply being curious, not caring. Hearing no response, Yuan shifted his gaze to look at Yu, who had an air of melancholy around her, alongside a pondering expression on her face. If you're worried, I can try looking for them. I am not worried about them. They are terrible people who don't deserve to be cared about. Yu exclaimed with a look of denial on her face. Yuan smiled and said, It's okay if you do. I won't blame you or hate you for it. After all, they are still your parents by blood. However, Yu adamantly shook her head and said, I truly am not worried about them, brother Yuan. Just like you, I am simply curious about their situation. After a brief moment of silence, she continued, Though perhaps deep within my soul, I still have some feelings for them. Yuan chuckled. It won't take too much effort to look for them. There is only so much space for them to hide in this tiny place, after all. It's fine really. If we are fated to encounter each other again, we will definitely see them in the future. I will leave it to fate. Fate, huh? Yuan muttered in a low voice and didn't say anything else. The two of them remained quiet until they returned to the Eternal Lotus's headquarters a few minutes later. As they drew nearer to the headquarters, Yu noticed that it was a little rowdier than usual during this time of the day. There's so many people gathered at the front gate. Something must have happened. Yu pointed at the group of people standing outside the front gate with a worried frown on her face. Yuan stopped their movements and hovered in the sky to learn more about the situation before sticking their noses into it. At a glance, there were two distinct groups, with Bai Lianhua leading one and a robust young man leading the other. They appeared to be in a heated conversation. Are you going to continue hiding in your headquarters forever, Eternal Lotuses? Our fiery locust swarm challenged you to a ranking match. Since we are ranked lower than your faction and within 10 ranks, you must accept it, or Eternal Lotuses will automatically lose its current rank to us. The person in front of one of these groups shouted out loud. Bai Lianhua sneered in response. If you want to talk about hiding, why don't you tell your master to get out of her hole, and come face us personally instead of sending a bunch of goons to my front door? You're dirtying our beautiful home with your unwanted presence. Looks like the fiery queen is messing with us again. Yu sighed after understanding the situation. Fiery queen. Yuan mumbled as he held a pondering expression. Chapter 1452 Unlimited Money. Chapter 1452 Unlimited Money. 1452 Unlimited Money. Since it's already late, we will leave for now and give you another night to think through it, Bai Lianhua. If you do not give us a response by tomorrow evening, we will put in an official request with the Cultivators Association. If you don't respond or show up to our challenge, your faction's rank will drop by another 10 ranks. How many ranks have your faction already dropped these past few months? 30? 40? Ha ha ha. The robust young man laughed out loud as he pointed at the Bai Lianhua and the others. Both choices will require us to participate in the ranking match, you shameless bastard. Yeah. Do you think you can start bullying us because you have the other family's support? If you want to fight, you've got it. Senior sister Bai, let's teach these bastards a lesson. Bai Lianhua merely shook her head in silence before turning around and walking back into their headquarters. Seeing this, the fiery locust swarm left shortly after. Once things calmed down and everyone returned to their residence, Yuan descended with Yu and went to find Bai Lianhua. Welcome back. Did you enjoy your day? Bai Lianhua said with a smile after seeing them, acting like the drama at their front gate had never even happened. Senior sister, we saw what happened at the front gates. Yu went straight to the point. Oh, sorry you had to witness that, Yuan. Bai Lianhua sighed. Fiery Queen sent those people to challenge your faction? Why? He asked. Just to provoke and mess with us, I suppose. Our families have been rivals for generations, even long before we attained our current position, so we've been butting heads with each other for as long as I can remember. However, they have never been this aggressive before. I guess what happened last time had triggered something in Fiery Queen, so I am partially responsible for this. Yuan muttered with a bittersweet smile. What? Of course not. But it is true that I flipped that trigger. And who told Fiery Queen to conspire against you with the other families? She's 100% responsible for her own actions, so don't you dare blame yourself for this, okay? I understand, but I have to ask, what are you going to do now? From what I've seen, it seems like you don't want to fight them, even if ITLL affect your ranking. Why? Are you not confident in defeating them? Eternal Lotuses should be pretty high up in the rankings, right? I doubt you've achieved such a rank without proper qualifications. You're right. We've managed to reach the top 10 in the world. However, that was before the system update. Now that people can acquire cultivation resources from, we've been surpassed by many factions, as we do not have the resources to feed all of our members with treasures. Bai Lianhua sighed. And before you say anything, let me explain. While it's true that my family is quite resourceful, enough to increase all of our members' cultivation to remain in the top 10, I promised myself that I would not rely on my family's resources to assist my own faction. I created the faction because I wanted to achieve something with my own capabilities. After all, most of our funding comes from my own wallet, which I earn through my own effort, and while I can afford a few treasures here and then, it's not nearly enough to keep our faction in the top 10 any longer. Moreover, the Bai family has another faction, which is being led by its patriarch, my father. Even he does not have the resources to fund two large factions at once. I didn't know you funded the faction alone. That's very impressive, Yuan said. Bai Lianhua shook her head and said, while that was true in the beginning, and I still contribute about 75% of our overall funds. The others are also contributing to the faction by donating some of their own earnings from Cultivation Online. It's a group effort, so I cannot claim all of the credits alone. What about the Demon Ceiling faction? How are you guys being funded? Yu suddenly asked. Well, Yuan had to ponder for a minute before responding. Honestly, I am not sure. Mei Xiu used to handle all of the faction's affairs, but she was replaced by her mother, who handles everything now. The other members are fully capable of funding their own cultivation, and they've never approached me for funding. While I do assist them with treasures and techniques here and there, I don't think it would have made too much of a difference in their growth. With that said, we're not your ordinary faction, so we don't have the same routine as most. What about their cultivation techniques? Do you all cultivate the same techniques as we do? Bai Lianhua asked. No, we all have our own cultivation technique. Besides Mei Xiu and Chu Liuxiang, I had nothing to do with how they acquired their techniques. Really? Even though you can acquire as many techniques as you want for free? Yu said with a doubtful look on her face. Huh. What do you mean by that? Bai Lianhua looked at Yu after hearing her words. Yuan answered with a smile. I have some connections with the owner of Myriad of Techniques, and I can pretty much take any technique from there without paying. You what? Bai Lianhua nearly fell off her chair after hearing this shocking information. And you can share these techniques with others? She then asked. Yes. Are there any limits? Not that I know of. I can even sell them if I want. That's ridiculous and totally unfair. You essentially have unlimited money. Bai Lianhua stood up in sheer shock. Yuan chuckled and asked, not really. I don't want to break the economy by selling too many techniques. He continued after a slight pause. Do you want some techniques? I can donate some to your faction. Bai Lianhua's eyes widened with disbelief after hearing his offer. After a moment of silence, she sighed. As much as I want to, I cannot accept your offer. That'd be no different from relying on my family's wealth. Yuan shook his head and said, you don't have to be so strict with yourself. You're just going to hinder yourself at this rate, not to mention your members. And you've already done more than enough and proven your own capabilities. Nobody would blame you for needing assistance now, nor is it shameful. Even if you say that. Bai Lianhua turned silent with a serious, pondering expression on her face. Chapter 1453 Faction War. Chapter 1453 Faction War. 1453 Faction War. Although I don't want to admit it, he's right. Because of my stubbornness, our faction has been declining for the past several months, and our overall morale has dipped. The others say that everything is fine, but they're probably doubting my ability to continue leading Eternal Lotuses effectively. Bai Lianhua sighed inwardly as she pondered her own faults. I have already managed to bring my faction to the top 10 of the world through my own efforts. I wanted to reach first place, but there's only so much a single person to do, especially considering the current world's circumstances. She turned to look at Yu, who sat there with a calm expression, and asked, what do you think of your brother's proposal, Yu? I think this isn't a decision for me to make, even if it's my brother's offer, she quickly replied. I know. I am just asking for your input. What do you think about our faction's current standing? Yu nodded, her face serious, and said, our faction is struggling, even though everything appears normal at a glance. My fellow sisters are feeling frustrated, because we're being bullied without the ability to retaliate. The fact that nobody was able to bully us before makes that feeling much worse. I understand that senior sister has her own pride and ambitions, but please reconsider accepting my brother's help. I think we need it, and it'll recover our fellow sister's morale. Even though Bai Lianhua was already aware of everything Yu Rou had mentioned, it still felt bad to hear it coming from another person's mouth. Bai Lianhua sighed. You're right. I am often told that I have a stubborn personality. Sorry if I've been such a useless leader. Please, senior sister, don't call yourself useless. You're anything but useless. She shook her head and said, a leader that cannot protect their own faction is useless in my eyes. Then, she turned to look at Yuan and said, okay, I will accept your generous donation, but I won't accept it for free. With that being said, I don't know how to repay you, so let's just put it on my tab for now, if you don't mind. Yuan nodded while chuckling, sure, I don't mind. And since I don't know what techniques would benefit you the most, I'll bring you to the myriad of techniques so that you can pick them for yourself. But aren't you in the fourth heaven, brother? Yu Rou asked. Yes so? If you think we can't meet because of that, I can simply just go back down to the third heaven. Wouldn't that cost you a tremendous amount of resources? Most people who have ascended aren't able to descend, mostly for that reason, Bai Lianhua said. Yuan raised an eyebrow. Although he had never tried descending before, he always assumed it would be free for some reason. Now that I think about it, I probably thought it was free since I am the master of the stairway to heaven, but that might not be the case for others. Bai Lianhua swallowed nervously after hearing that they might start participating in ranking matches. Chapter 1454 Participating in a Faction War. Chapter 1454 Participating in a Faction War. 1454 Participating in a Faction War. Really? Are you really going to start participating in faction wars, Brother Yuan? Yu Rou exclaimed excitedly. He nodded. Yes, it seems fun. Bai Lianhua wiped the invisible sweat on her forehead, her hand trembling slightly, and said, it's going to get rowdy once the rest of the world learns of this. Countless people, myself included, have anticipated the day the famous demon-sealing faction shows their prowess. Despite being worldwide famous, you guys have never participated in any events, and people are starting to question whether the demon-sealing faction actually exists or is just a fake faction. Yuan chuckled at this information and said, faction rankings and whatnot are insignificant matters in our eyes, and we're always busy improving our own cultivation in both earth and insignificant, huh? While that may be true for you, who live in an entirely different world from the rest of us mortals, one's rankings determine whether they are respected, sponsored, or left in the dust. And having a sponsor is incredibly important, as many factions, including top-ranking factions, depend on them for survival and growth. Does Eternal Lotuses have any sponsors? Yuan asked. We used to have some, but I refused any monetary support from them so that they wouldn't impact our faction in the slightest, even if they were to disappear from our lives one day suddenly. My decision proved correct since all our sponsors stopped supporting us simultaneously last month. It would have greatly affected our operations if we'd relied on them, and I am willing to bet my savings that Fiery Queen had something to do with it. Bai Lianhua shuddered at the thought of their faction being forced to close down due to a sudden lack of finances. I see. I am beginning to understand the economy of factions now. Honestly, I created my faction on a whim. I wanted a place for my friends and family, a place we can call home. I never once considered looking for sponsors or whatnot. Then how do the rankings work? Is it true that you must accept a challenge or you'll lose your rank? Yuan then asked. Bai Lianhua nodded. Yes, but that is only true if the challengers are within 10 ranks of their target. This is to prevent those at the top from purposefully avoiding faction wars to prolong their rank. While we don't have to fight those who challenge us, we'll lose our rank to the challenger if we don't respond. Also, a faction can only be challenged once a month by those within 10 ranks. What rank is your faction at right now? Last I checked, we were at rank 77, A far cry from rank 9 just several months ago. I feel frustrated and ashamed every time I think about it, she sighed. Then what about my demon ceiling faction? Yuan suddenly asked. The ranking system has changed drastically since it was first implemented, but the demon ceiling faction should be unranked at this moment since you guys haven't participated in any faction wars. Is that so? Yuan closed his eyes and proceeded to ponder about some things. After a moment of silence, he opened his eyes to look at Bai Lianhua and showed her an ominous smile. You don't want to deal with the fiery locust swarm, correct? How about we take care of them for you? Huh? You want to challenge the fiery locust swarm? The demon ceiling faction only has 11 members, correct? Bai Lianhua said. 12 now. Yuan smiled. In order to manage the demon ceiling faction's affairs, Meifeng also joined their faction. Bai Lianhua looked at him in disbelief and said a moment later, I don't mean to look down on you or your faction, but you want to defeat the fiery locust swarm with 12 people. I told you that a faction war requires a team effort, right? Unless you're a spirit king or everyone in your faction is a spirit lord, you won't be able to overcome the difference in numbers. We're all spirit grandmasters, but we won't know until we try. Well, most faction wars are sieges nowadays, where two factions attempt to overtake the other's base. Even you can't defend a base from thousands of people with 12, I think. That sounds like a challenge to me. Yuan smiled. He suddenly retrieved his cell phone and dialed a number. What are you doing? Bai Lianhua had a bad feeling about his actions. An excited voice resounded from the phone the following moment. Hello, this is Chairman Li. Good evening, Chairman Li. Do you have a moment to talk right now? Of course. I always have time for you, Yuan. It's been a while since I've heard from you. I hope you've been doing well. I've been doing well. Thank you for asking. Anyways, the purpose for my call is this. After a brief pause, he continued. The demon ceiling faction would like to participate in a faction war. Do you think you can help me arrange one? What? The demon ceiling faction. Are you serious? Chairman Li's voice was filled with shock and excitement. Of course. Why would I joke about something like this? Chairman Li didn't immediately respond, but Yuan could hear some weird noises coming from the background. A moment later, Chairman Li responded in a calm voice. When would you like to participate in a faction war? Do you have an opponent in mind? If not, we can help you put out a notice to attract challengers. I do have an opponent in mind. They are called Fiery Locust Swarm. Ah. After a moment of silence, Chairman Li's dumbfounded voice resounded again. Did you just say Fiery Locust Swarm? But they are ranked 86th in the world with over 40,000 members, while the Demon Ceiling faction only has 40,000 members, huh? I wasn't expecting such a large number, but their number is irrelevant to me. Or am I unable to challenge them due to the difference in our member count? Yuan asked. Regardless of your member count and rank, you are able to challenge anyone that isn't below your rank, but your faction will be at an immense disadvantage. And whether they accept the challenge or not is an entirely different matter. Chairman Li said. Chapter 1455 Fiery Locust Swarm. Chapter 1455 Fiery Locust Swarm 1455 Fiery Locust Swarm. Surely, they are not going to give up the chance to defeat the famous Demon Ceiling faction, right? After all, we're only 12 people. Yuan chuckled through the phone, leaving Chairman Li utterly speechless. Are you seriously going to challenge the Fiery Locust Swarm to a faction war? You might have to go against hundreds if not thousands of them with just 12 of you. Chairman Li asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Yes, I am serious, Yuan replied, his voice filled with determination. A moment of silence later, Chairman Li sighed. Very well, I will send your challenge request to the Fiery Locust Swarm, but before I can do that, I need to know the details of the challenge. As the challenger, you may set your terms for the match, such as limiting the amount of participants and the suggested challenge mode. Since this is my first time participating in a faction war, much less challenging another faction, can you run me through it? Of course. First things first. What mode do you want to fight them in? We have Siege mode, Tower Defense mode, War mode, Capture the Flag mode, Scavenger mode and Tournament mode. Since you only have 12 members, I suggest doing Tournament or Scavenger mode, but most factions tend to avoid these two modes because they won't be able to take advantage of their member counts. The Fiery Locust Swarm will definitely reject your challenge if you request either of these modes. I thought we couldn't select our match conditions. Yuan asked. That's only true if you're within 10 ranks of your opponent and you're aiming for their rank. Since the Demon Sealing faction is currently unranked, the Fiery Locust Swarm can refuse your challenge without any consequences, so the rules are much more relaxed. Of course, they can still lose their rank if they are defeated. I see. Can you give me a brief explanation of the available modes? Chairman Li nodded and explained. In Siege mode, each faction will possess a castle, and the objective is to conquer the opposing castle and kill their ruler for victory. The ruler cannot join any battles or fight back, only run. There is no player limit for this mode, but there must be at least 1,000 total players on the field. In Tower Defense mode, each faction controls 5 towers. The first one to control all 5 towers, or the most towers before time runs out, will win. There is no player limit for this mode, but there must be at least 100 total players on the field. In War mode, it mirrors a conflict with equitable conditions, with both factions engaging in battle on a field with evenly matched soldiers of comparable cultivation levels. The first faction to lose all soldiers will lose. However, you won't be able to participate in this unless you can match your opponent's soldiers' prowess and number, and vice versa. You need at least 100 players from each faction to participate, but there is no player limit. Capture the Flag is similar to Siege mode, but you must steal the enemy's flag and bring it back to your base before they can do the same to your flag. Each faction is limited to 300 players in this mode. In Scavenger mode, both factions will scavenge items scattered across a spacious field and bring them back to base, with each retrieved item granting points. As long as the item hasn't been retrieved, the opponent can steal it. The one with the highest point in the end wins. Each faction is limited to 30 players in this mode. Last but not least, Tournament mode. In this mode, both factions will select their strongest members to fight against each other on a traditional stage. The fights will be one-on-one, and the winner of the match may continue fighting in the second match until they lose. The first one to defeat all of their opponent's fighters will win. Each faction is limited to 10 players. For all of these modes except Tournament mode, each participant will wear a badge that represents their life. If one's badge is destroyed, they are considered dead, can no longer participate in the match, and will be removed from the battlefield. This keeps the participants from purposefully aiming at each other's necks, keeping them safe. Also, the weapons provided cannot slice flesh but can break bones. I'm impressed. This is pretty well thought out. It sounded dangerous at first, but it turned out to be quite safe. Yuan said. Of course. Faction war is akin to sports nowadays after all. While we have had some casualties, some accidents cannot be avoided when everyone is a cultivator. Alright, give me a moment to think now, Yuan said. A few minutes later he spoke, let's do Siggy mode. What about the number of players? You need at least 1,000 total players to participate, so with 12 members on your side, your enemy needs to have at least 988 players. Yuan smiled and said, no limit. They can bring all 40,000 of their members if they want. What? But that's... Chairman Li was left speechless by Yuan's arrogance. Even by Lianhua and Yu couldn't help but stare at him with wide eyes, as if they were looking at a madman. I'm serious. I want them to attack us with full force. If that's truly what you want. It is, Yuan confirmed. I understand. Any cultivation limit? Nope. What about martial techniques? Do you want to allow the usage of martial techniques? Omicron M, of course. When would you like to challenge them? Right now, and give them until tomorrow midnight to respond. If they accept, can you schedule the match to start within a few days? A few days? That's quite the rush, but it's possible if we push all scheduled matches back a day. It will probably upset the other factions, though. Actually, probably not. I'm sure they'll understand. This is the famous Demon Sealing faction's debut, after all. Alright, I have all the information I need. I will notify the fiery locust swarm of your challenge right away. Thank you, Chairman Li. To show my gratitude, I'll donate some techniques to the Cultivators Association later, said Yuan. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.